Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Corva Coleman. President Trump has signed an executive order ending collective bargaining for wide swaths of federal employees. The White House says the president has the authority to do this. NPR's Andrea Hsu reports unions say they will fight the move.
The White House says under a 1978 federal law, the president can end collective bargaining in federal agencies whose missions involve national security. Already, for example, CIA agents do not have union representation. But now Trump has expanded this to groups of employees at close to 20 other agencies, including the Departments of Agriculture, Veterans Affairs, Health and Human Services, State, Justice, and many others. In a fact sheet, the White House said certain federal unions have declared war on President Trump's agenda. Unions have sued the Trump administration to block some of its actions, including the mass firings of employees and access to sensitive data. They're calling this latest move a retaliatory attack. Andrea Hsu, NPR News.
The military chief of Myanmar says 144 people have been killed and more than 700 injured in a strong earthquake today. Michael Sullivan reports the quake also shook Thailand, and Thai government officials say at least 3 people there have been killed.
The U.S. Geological Survey says the 7.7 magnitude quake struck around 12:50 p.m. local time, about 10 miles northwest of the town of Sagaing. A magnitude 6.4 aftershock followed about 12 minutes later. Social media shows people cowering on the tarmac at what appears to be the airport in nearby Mandalay, with fallen debris in several parts of the airport's terminal. Additional social media posts from Mandalay show collapsed buildings and debris in the streets. NPR's not confirmed the accuracy of the posts. The quake could be felt here in Chiang Rai, northern Thailand, and as far away as the capital, Bangkok, nearly 500 miles to the south, where there people ran from buildings into the street. For NPR News, I'm Michael Sullivan in Chiang Rai.
Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth is traveling in the Philippines. He is seeking to strengthen the U.S.'s commitment to the Indo-Pacific region. Hegseth is continuing to reply to questions about sharing information in a text chat about U.S. military strikes on Yemen. From member station KPRG, Nina Rao has more.
When asked whether he took some accountability for the Signal group chat leak on Monday, Hegseth underscored his responsibility for the Defense Department to be prepared and ready to deter and defeat enemies.
As the leader of that department, my job is to advise and work alongside the president and then work with my fellow cabinet members to ensure that we're operationalizing in every way possible, reestablishing that deterrence.
Hegseth will also meet with U.S. troops stationed in the Philippines before heading to his last stop in Japan. For NPR News, I'm Nina Rao in Manila.
You're listening to NPR.
Good morning. With the latest from the GBH Newsroom, I'm Henry Santoro. A strike by unionized faculty at Wellesley College now in its second day. Non-tenure track faculty walked off the job yesterday morning, citing an impasse after 10 months of contract negotiations with administrators. The union, Wellesley Organized Academic Workers, says compensation, workload, and other benefits remain key sticking points. Leah Ukarama is an instructor in the biological sciences and a union member. She says current salaries aren't enough to live in the greater Boston area.
In addition, there are a number of benefits that tenure-track faculty get from the college that non-tenure-track faculty don't receive. For example, a mortgage benefit to help buy a house in the area.
In a statement, Wellesley leaders say the union rejected a package that included substantial pay increases, but the school is ready to continue negotiations. Former New Zealand Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern will be at a showing of a new documentary on Martha's Vineyard this evening. That's according to the Martha's Vineyard Times. The documentary is called Prime Minister, and it chronicles the Right Honourable Dame's 2 terms as Prime Minister from 2017 to 2023. After the film, there'll be a Q&A with the film's co-director Lindsay Utz and with Ardern herself. The event is set for 7:45 this evening at the Islands Performing Arts Center. Red Sox undefeated. They play Game 2 of their series with Texas tonight. It's an 8:05 start, 51 degrees in Boston. This is GBH News.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Lilly Endowment, a private foundation supporting NPR's coverage of religion and spirituality, and Jarl and Pamela Mohn, focusing on civil liberties, foster youth, public radio, and the arts.
Eastern Variety. I am Marjorie Egan. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH Live. Thank you. Wow. Live from the Boston Public Library, and you're streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. I have a little programming note here. We're going to be joined by Mayor Michelle Wu, April 8th here at the Boston Public Library. And, of course, no tickets or RSVP needed. Good morning, Jim.
Hey there. So on Tuesday night, as we discussed at length yesterday, Tufts grad student Rumeysa Ozturk was surrounded by plainclothes masked people, ICE agents, physically grabbed her off the street by her off-campus apartment in Somerville. She's now in a Louisiana detention center, the same one holding Columbia student Mahmoud Khalil. Her attorneys were unable to contact her for hours and say ICE officials violated a court order barring Ozturk from being taken out of state. Her visa has been revoked despite not being charged with a crime. Secretary of State Marco Rubio says her involvement in an opinion piece in the Tufts student newspaper Supporting Palestinians is offensive enough, alleging her speech amounts to material support, he says, for the terrorist group Hamas.
If you apply for a visa to enter the United States and be a student, and you tell us that the reason why you're coming to the United States is not just because you want to write op-eds, but because you want to participate in movements that are involved in doing things like vandalizing universities, harassing students, taking over buildings, creating a ruckus, we're not going to give you a visa.
None of which she did, by the way. Congressman Ayanna Pressley, who represents Ozturk in her district, and other Massachusetts lawmakers have called for a release. Representative Pressley joins us now on Zoom. Congresswoman, thanks so much for your time.
Good to be with you. Yes, thank you very much for joining us, Congresswoman. So, what do you make of this?
Well, the video is harrowing. The experience must have been harrowing and continues to be one for Rumeysa Ozturk. This is a PhD student here legally on a student visa, someone making positive contributions to the Tufts community and to my district. And what we saw unfold there, just to paint the scene fully, it's Ramadan. She's on her way to an iftar to break her fast. And then plainclothes men in masks aggressively approach her. She is fearful, you can hear her on the audio, that she might be a victim of a crime herself and says, "I'm calling the police." To which they reply, we are the police. And then she is taken away and detained. And then they defy a judge's order, take her out of state. And so she is in Louisiana right now. And mind you, because her rights of free speech have been violated, this is an attack on free speech. Due process has been violated here. She was not taken before a judge. There was no court process. There's no evidence of any criminal wrongdoing. The only alleged crime is that she exercised free speech and co-authored an op-ed where she affirmed the dignity and humanity of all people and called on Tufts to acknowledge the Palestinian genocide, which she has every right to do under the First Amendment. And because there was no due process, she's also an asthma sufferer.
Yeah.
Takes 2 medications a day and does not have those with her. So wherever you fall on the issue of Israel and Palestine, whether you are a Democrat or a Republican, you should be deeply alarmed by the harrowing events that took place on that video recording and by this assault and attack on free speech and on due process. This could happen to anyone.
Well, speaking of that, I'm sorry, go ahead, Congressman, I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Jim.
Well, even if you say it could happen to anyone, even if Mahmoud Khalil, and we spoke to his lawyer the other day from the Civil Liberties Union in New York City, and Ozturk are freed, is there any reason to think that Trump's people won't just keep doing this again, and again? Is there any reason?
There's no reason, Jim. And, the painful contradiction and hypocrisy here is that allegedly this is being done under the guise of law and order, and they continue to empower their agencies to move with lawlessness. This was rogue. It was lawless. It was frightening. It is chilling, and it is meant to intimidate, because that's what a dictator does. They seek to silence dissenting voices. And this is frightening. This is a 5-alarm fire that everyone should be raising their voices in outcry. And I do want to say how heartening it has been to see the Somerville community, Rumesa's neighbors, who have, received those Know Your Rights trainings and were asking all the appropriate questions. But I have to also acknowledge that the fear is palpable and real and growing. That people are afraid to exercise freedom of speech. People are afraid to be in community. And so we're demanding answers. And we are demanding that her visa be reinstated. Myself, Senator Warren, and a number of congressional colleagues have signed onto a letter that I co-led, that we've sent to the administration, demanding answers, due process, and for her visa to be reinstated.
Congressman, one of the things I think is so upsetting to people, and you mentioned the rogue, lawless, frightening, chilling, the people not identifying themselves, some of them, saying they're police without their badges, the mask, the whole thing. But it seems that this keeps happening. I think, 2 weeks ago, when the Khalil was taken at Columbia? He's still in Louisiana. His wife is any days away from giving birth. It seems like these lawless and frightening and chilling things keep happening, but we can't do anything about them. I mean, maybe in a month or 2 months or 6 months, or, you know what I mean?
Well, look, again, their strategy is shock and awe. It's to dramatize what it is that they're doing. It is to, the reason they are so anti, wokeness, if you will, is that they want to lull us into a complacency where we see their vision for this country as one that is an inevitability, that we are in our fear oppressed into inaction and indifference. And the only way to respond to a dictator, which is what Donald Trump is with defiance. And the way that we demonstrate that defiance is that we continue to amplify Ramisa's story. We continue to demand her release and due process, and that her visa is reinstated. We cannot, in silence or even in our fear, be complicit, because they're not going to stop. Mahmoud Khalil, what's happening to Ramisa Ozturk, again, it could be any of us. I mean, think about our college campuses. These are meant to be places of debate and discourse. You are building up global citizens. I mean, think about the Vietnam War protests. This is what happens on college campuses. And so it is chilling that people could be disappeared, kidnapped in plain view simply for dissenting opinion. And that's what a dictator does. They seek to silence dissenting opinion, anyone that disagrees with their worldview. And again, Rumesa has no criminal record. She's not been charged with anything. The only thing she did was co-author an op-ed where she affirmed the dignity and the humanity of all people.
Well, one last question then. Let's assume a person who is here legally, like the young man who graduated from Columbia, or like Ozturk, comes to you, Congresswoman, and says, I want to sign an op-ed exactly like the one Ozturk did, showing my support for the Palestinian people. But I'm worried that I want to stand up, I want to speak out, like you said on that radio show. I'm worried that's going to happen to me. What do you tell him or her?
That is their constitutional right to exercise freedom of speech. And we cannot allow this dictator to win by denying us that which are our constitutional rights. And that in the same way, I mean, look, I can't talk anyone out of their fear, okay? I have to meet people where they are, and ultimately they make a decision based on their own comfort. But I'm very clear that what the Trump administration wants is to silence dissenting voices that are alternative to their own worldview and their belief system. Those are the actions of a dictator. And the only way we beat a dictator is to continue to organize, is public outcry, is defiance. And again, we have sent in this letter to the administration demanding due process, her immediate release, and for her visa to be reinstated. If we just are silent, they will only continue to be that much more emboldened in these rogue and lawless authoritarianist actions.
You know, Congresswoman Jim said one last thing for me. There's a planned nationwide demonstration April 5th. Part of it's going to be taking place here in Boston. The chill, it may extend not just to people that are here from different countries, but to United States citizens. Should we be worried about ICE being on Boston Common, looking for people to take away if they say the wrong things?
Well, again, the only way to meet a dictator is with defiance and with solidarity and community. And as I said when I was on your show previously, if anyone in this moment thinks that they can otherize who stands to be impacted by the dangerous, lawless, and rogue actions of this administration, you are sadly and sorely mistaken. In the same way that their executive actions are coming for everyone, and people from every walk of life and every member of this community will feel that hurt, the same is true for these actions when it comes to what we just saw happen in Somerville with Rumeysa Ozturk, and what we saw several weeks ago with Mahmoud Khalil, who should be home with his pregnant wife. Again, no evidence of any criminal wrongdoing, a denied due process. And so this could happen to anyone. This is an assault on free speech. This is an assault on due process, and everyone should be alarmed. And I need everyone to join us in public outcry while I continue to work very closely with my colleagues in the Massachusetts delegation, with Mayor Ballantyne of Somerville, and of course with Rumeysa's legal counsel.
Congresswoman, as always, we can't thank you enough for your time. We hope to speak to you again soon.
Hope to see y'all in person.
Yes, we would love that. Thank you very much for taking the time, Congresswoman. We appreciate it. We have been speaking, of course, with Massachusetts Congresswoman Ayanna Pressley, who represents the 7th Congressional District, which includes Somerville, which includes Tufts, where, of course, this on the street in broad daylight, which many people are calling it a disappearing or a kidnapping, took place. Thanks again to the Congresswoman. Coming up after a quick break, the phone and
The holy month of Ramadan ends this weekend, an event that depends on the lunar calendar.
Moon sighting is a celebratory event. It is a community-driven event. There is a lot of emotion behind it.
The skill and practice of moon sighting. That's next time on The World.
This afternoon at 3, here on GBH News 89.7.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you. And Neville Place Assisted Living in Cambridge, providing residents with a range of services designed to help seniors stay sharp, social, and independent. More at nevilleplace.org/care. And WellPoint, committed to providing the individuals and families who serve the Commonwealth of Massachusetts and its municipalities with health plan options. Health plan information is available at wellpointmass.com.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Marge Regan, Jim Browdy, live at the library, streaming youtube.com/GBH News. It's a depressing start to the show, but we have some spectacular music just 15 minutes away, so do not go anywhere. We're continuing to reflect on what not just the Congresswoman, but our Attorney General, Andrea Campbell, described as a kidnapping of that Tufts University student. I guess we have two questions for you. One, if you're an international student, why would you come to the United States anymore? Why would you believe that you are likely to be safe? Would you come? And I guess the second question is, while the Congresswoman just said quite carefully, I want to meet an individual, a student, for example, where they are, her basic call was for everybody to speak out. And the irony is we have students who have the courage to say what they think, but so many university presidents who are in hiding, with the exception of the handful that we mention every few days. including Mount Holyoke, Wesleyan, Princeton, that sort of thing. What do you think about her call to action, call to speak? 877-301-8970. If you're an international, let's just play the sound. Here's an unidentified international graduate student at Tufts, by the way, speaking to a CBS reporter about how he's afraid to walk around even after his classmate Ozturk was captured.
I'm scared. My parents are scared. You come to a country where you're told there's rule of law and certain guaranteed constitutional right for everyone on the land, and you see what seems like flagrant violations of that happening. And it's natural that I'd be pretty scared.
I think it is natural you'd be pretty scared. 877-301-8970.
Jamie pulled for us a piece from the Washington Post about Elon Musk, who of course is heading up in lockstep with President Trump on many of his policies, pointing out again, South African-born Elon Musk worked illegally in the United States as he launched his entrepreneurial career after ditching his graduate studies program at Stanford in California. He never enrolled in classes, and he has not. And he was here overstaying that student experience. He's not publicly disclosed. He did not have the legal right to work while building the company that became Zip2, which sold for about $300 million. Basically, he left school without legal basis to remain in the United States. So I just find that interesting to point out.
Jamie in Worcester, you were first on Boston Public Radio. Thank you for the call. Welcome.
Hi. I was just listening to Congressperson Crossley, and I have read that she signed a letter with 13 other congresspeople demanding the release of Mahmoud Khalil, I guess demanding that of the administration.
Yeah.
And not all congresspeople from Massachusetts signed that. And I'm hoping that other congresspeople from Massachusetts are questioned, for example, by Boston Public Radio about why they did not sign that petition.
Well, I am not only do I not know that they didn't,
sure.
I'm pretty sure, Jamie, can you check this? I think the Globe letter, which with the letter that relates to Ozturk, the Tufts student, and the Globe story today, I don't think every member of the House of Representatives in Massachusetts signed that either. I know the two senators did, and Presley did, and Catherine Clark. But Jamie will let us know in a minute. But you have our commitment. We will check, and maybe even before the end of the show, let people know who did not sign either of those letters. And I promise you in the next couple of days, we'll reach out to them to find out why. It's an excellent question. I wish we had an answer. Jamie, thanks for the call.
Deb from Manchester by the Sea raises a great question. What prevents any criminal from wearing all black and a mask and pulling people off the street under the guise that they're ICE?
Well, that was her point. Why would you even comply? I mean, she's screaming. That is exactly the point here.
Yeah.
Plain clothes, mask. How terrifying. Imagine yourself, by the way. How terrifying is that? And by the way, your final question to her, I think is totally legit. We've been, this Tom Homan border czar bully thing, they've swept up not only people who are here legally, like legal permanent residents, like the student who graduated from Columbia, but citizens of the United States who don't look like you're supposed to look, I guess, according to them, and be in the United States. It's beyond belief. Kathy in Medway, hey.
Hi.
Hi.
Hi. I just wanted to say that I am in complete agreement with Ariana Presley on this, and I believe that we will see not only people from other countries, but American citizens are going to be arrested and taken into custody for protesting against these policies. I recently read the book In the Garden of the Beast.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah.
About the American ambassador to Germany in the 1930s, and we're reliving that exact thing here right now. I'd really like to see people step up. There is incredible opportunities if they want to just Google protests that are coming up. I think there's something massive that's going to happen, and I hope people will not be afraid and stand up against this.
I hope you're right, but Kathy, I have to say, and I know there was a wonderful showing, as the Congresswoman mentioned, in Somerville, a couple thousand people the other day. The level of, I don't know, is meekness a word? meekicity, whatever it is.
We've been fairly meek.
Meek, including, most troubling, people with great power. I am obsessed with these university presidents, these law firms that are capitulating. We have another one I'll talk about a little bit later in the show to Donald Trump. In his executive orders, in my estimation, clear violation of the Constitution. But rather than fight, they are making love with this guy, and it's appalling, and it enables this drift towards autocracy that the caller was talking about.
You know, I mentioned before the show that a woman, a Tufts graduate, who was a big deal at Hillel when she was at Tufts.
Oh, yeah, you said
Apparently
this, yeah.
She was there at the time that Jamie was.
Jewish student organization, for those who don't know.
Is now CEO of the Jewish Council for Public Affairs. She was on television last night on CNN saying that the Trump administration is not really about anti-Semitism here, that they are exploiting anti-Semitism, the real anti-Semitism that no one would deny that went on a lot of these college campuses, including at Columbia, because if they were really interested in fighting anti-Semitism, they wouldn't have pardoned the anti-Semites who participated in the January 6 attacks on the Capitol. They wouldn't have defunded those sections of the Department of Education that protect Jewish students and all students from in the Civil Rights Division. They wouldn't have banned Holocaust Remembrance Days from some of the government websites. This is like a sham, and they refuse to differentiate between people's upset, and millions of Jews are upset about what's happened in Gaza and being in favor of terrorists. They're trying to put the two together.
Well, add what you said yesterday, too. Jews shall not replace us. In Charlottesville,
Right.
Find people on both sides.
Yep. And they also complained about Elon. She also mentioned Elon Musk, and the supposed Nazi salute. We don't know if that was really a Nazi salute, but many people seem to think it was a Nazi salute.
Where do you want to go?
Let's go to Martha in Randolph.
Hi, Martha.
Hey guys, yeah, thank you for touching on this subject. I'm a former international student.
Oh.
I am now a U.S. citizen, but I'm still scared. I have international travels coming up. I have no crimes. It just feels feels way than the first administration, which I was going through my process of becoming a citizen, and just things petty things like a stop sign, I was afraid I was going to that they're going to kick me out for this. And it's just, really the concern now is for me that it's not going to stop there. They're using this, this is against the Constitution, free speech. She committed no crimes. And the next step is citizens, and I don't think it's stopping. It's really, really scary.
Martha, if you had to do all over again and you hadn't been here until right now, would you have come?
That's a difficult question, and I have a niece and a nephew who are brilliant students outside of this country, and I don't think I want them here. Not because this country wouldn't give them the opportunity, but because of how the opportunity is there, but there's a lot of anger and injustice and xenophobia and racism that I don't think that it would be safe for them. So maybe not. I don't know.
Martha, we're really glad you called, and we hope you stay in touch with us and call us again. In answer to that first caller's thing, this is not the letter about the Columbia guy that graduated from Columbia. This is about the letter that was written in defense of Ozturk from Tufts. The two non-signers from the congressional delegation are Keating and Neal, and we'll reach out to them, but we've spoken to Keating a lot, spoken to Neal occasionally. I find it really hard to believe that they refused to sign the question. It may be a logistical thing, but I promise you, if not by 2 o'clock today, Monday, we will have spoken to their offices and let you know why they're not signatories.
Here's another good text. Funny how so many MAGA people complain about people wearing masks at protests, but ICE wears them when they are arresting people. Unlike police officers, like we said yesterday, you don't see a police officer with a mask over his face when he's arresting somebody.
I meant to look this up yesterday. Other than the desire to create fear in the person you're apprehending, kidnapping, disappearing, what other rationale is there for doing this?
Well, I read something about ICE didn't want people to recognize who they were. They didn't want to get pushback for what they did. And I thought, well, gee.
Well, so then every police officer should wear a mask.
Exactly. Should we put masks over our heads so no one can dox you? I guess that's what they were thinking. Roger from Marblehead. Hi.
Hello, Roger.
Hi, good morning.
You too.
No, I just wanted to make the point that as a Columbia graduate, I'm absolutely appalled by what's been going on with the arrest of the student there and so forth. But I think more to the point that the IVs and the IV adjacent need to band together their endowments and fight this guy tooth and nail. They have got to stop knuckling under, and they need to have a united front, as all major institutions in the country do, against this dictatorship. These guys really need to put their money where their mouth is, and they also need to kick out the sons and daughters of every Republican senator and congressperson.
Well, I don't know about that.
And boot them out onto the street.
Well, obviously, part of the audience agrees with you. I'm not sure I do. Roger, before you go away, the one thing we didn't mention, nor did you mentioned Columbia vis-a-vis the student who's now in Louisiana, the former student. We haven't mentioned that Columbia is one of the great capitulators that cut this deal in an attempt to, and they're not even guaranteed, that the $400 million in research funds that the Trump administration said they were going to cut would be restored. And they essentially surrendered, in my opinion, your alma mater, academic freedom.
Well, I agree. That's exactly the point I'm making, is that they need to stop that, and they need to stand together, all of them.
Can I tell you, I couldn't agree with you more, but someone far closer to this than you and I. Last week, we had Khalil Gibran Muhammad on, who used to be primarily at Harvard. Now he's primarily at Princeton. And we asked him the exact question you're posing. Why aren't they? Why aren't the 8 Ivy presidents meeting and doing that? And I'm almost verbatim, he said, because if they met, they'd have to do something. Meaning they don't want to do anything. You saw the letter from, 600 and some faculty members at Harvard urging the interim president there, whatever his name is, to do something. He is literally, you could put him on a milk carton. I mean, has anybody heard anything from this guy except we're going to be neutral on issues that don't directly affect us, otherwise known as any issue that offends people in power? I mean, it's grotesque. Roger, thank you for the call. Bill Keating, the congressman from the Cape, etc., one of the two was not signing, put out a strong statement yesterday about the Tufts student, and so we will check on Richie Neal, and we will have run through the whole Massachusetts delegation for you.
Listen to this, anonymous in Rhode Island. I've been a naturalized U.S. citizen for 64 of my 65 years, but I've decided it's unsafe to leave the country and expect to get back in. This is a tragedy in that we all knew what he was.
I haven't said this on the air. I know people who were born elsewhere who were, studying or teaching here, who are not going to visit their parents or doing things like that for fear.
Exactly.
Even though they're perfectly legally here and perfectly legally entitled to re-enter, they're fearful that they won't get back in.
The guy from New Hampshire, I think he's been here since 2007.
Is that the German?
The German guy, yeah. He came back in and he got stopped at Logan, and he had a DUI that he'd fixed, and he had some marijuana in his car years ago, and that was the reason he was snatched up. I mean, boy.
It's one of the, before we break here, the problem is there's so much, this is the same flood the zone crap. Mm-hmm. If we had time to stop for a minute and just think about what happened to this woman on the streets of Somerville, have you taken time to watch that video again and again and say, this is happening in our community, in our country in 2025? It is foul.
Listen to this. I know it may be paranoid, but maybe not. I'm an American citizen. I'm very upset about what's going on, but I'm afraid to go to protest or post things on Facebook because I'm a single mother and I don't want something to happen to me. It would be terrible for my daughter if I were taken away. She's an American citizen.
I get it.
I mean, that's why I was asking the congresswoman. I think people are thinking about that, about this April 5th nationwide protest.
I hope they decide to go regardless.
Common, I hope they do too, but you can see why people are scared. Anyway, enough of that. We're going to take a nice welcome break. We're going to hear some incredible music from the Handel and Haydn Society. They are up next for Live Music Friday. Pride has come early for the players there. Handel and Haydn up next. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH, live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Thank you.
Support for GBH comes from you. And the Boston Speakers Series, announcing its upcoming season at Symphony Hall for 7 evenings, featuring Dr. Anthony Fauci, Ken Burns, Outliers author Malcolm Gladwell, and freed Russian political prisoner Vladimir Kara-Murza. BostonSpeakers.org. And Turkish Airlines, flying to over 300 destinations worldwide, including Athens, Seoul, Mumbai, and more. A complete list of destinations and more information is available at turkishairlines.com. And the University of Massachusetts Amherst, the Commonwealth's flagship public university. You can learn more about research, innovation, and economic impact for the Commonwealth at umass.edu. Founded as a cultural counter-reaction to Russia's invasion of Ukraine, the Ukrainian Freedom Orchestra performs Beethoven's Ninth Symphony. Don't miss A Hymn for Peace, tonight at 10:30 on GBH2.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Marjorie Egan and Jim Browdy live from the library, streaming youtube.com/GBH News. It's time for Live Music Friday with Boston's historic Handel and Haydn Society. Performed its first concert in 1815, which makes it a mere 55 years younger than the violin our next guest is about to use. Carmen Levita Johnson Pajaro will perform at a pair of concerts this weekend at Symphony Hall, part of their Pride 25 celebrations, one tonight at 7:30, another Sunday at 3. Handel and Haydn, haydn.org for information and tickets. It's happening in concert with the Massachusetts LGBT Chamber of Commerce to remind us all that inclusion extends beyond June. In a few minutes, we'll talk with Carmen and Alexandria Eberhardt, the new executive director for the Mass LGBT Chamber of Commerce. But first, here's Carmen with a string trio performing Haydn's Opus 53, number 3. Welcome.
great Handel and Haydn Society, and they're performing Haydn's Opus 53, number 3. There are 2 concerts this weekend, one tonight at 7:30 and another Sunday at 3 o'clock. You want to go to handelandhaydn.org for info and tickets. That was absolutely amazing. We are
Carmen is joining us. Alex is already here.
She needs a little help with the microphone there.
She can really play a violin, but headphones, forget about it.
Poor day technology.
That bow work is unbelievable. I'm exhausted for your hand just watching you. So tell us about please introduce your players, Carmen.
Yes, Thomas Barth and Jenny Sterling on cello and viola.
Great.
And also tell people who may not know, Handel and Haydn has been around for years doing unbelievable performances, but some people may not know what it is.
Yes, so for anyone who's not familiar with the Handel and Haydn Society, it is, I think, the oldest orchestra in the country, actually. So it was founded, obviously, hundreds of years ago. And we're special because we play on gut strings. I'm not sure if anyone's familiar with that, but it differs from what you might hear in the Boston Symphony Orchestra, in that we play on strings made from animal gut. They're sheep gut, lamb gut, beef gut. It's from the intestines. No animals harmed in the process. They are totally good. So we play on those strings, and they're much warmer. It's a much nicer tone, in my opinion. I find it really warm, and you can really hear the difference in the sound of the strings, and the bows are different, and the winds play completely differently as well.
Well, also you capture what the composer heard and his or her people played, right?
Right, yeah. So I think it's really special to hear music on the instruments that they were originally written for. That's a very special and unique opportunity that you don't always get.
So, Alex, what are you doing here? What's your connection? What's the Chamber's connection to all this?
I just showed up this morning.
So do we, actually.
I said, give me one of these really cool headsets. No, I was invited. We're partnering with H&H for Pride Weekend in March, and I'm very excited to attend the festivities this evening and get to listen to. That was amazing. And I wish I was musically talented, but I am not at all.
Come on,
but there's
everybody is.
I can never be too old to start, right? So,
you can always sing.
You don't want to hear it.
Well, what is the LGBT Chamber of Commerce, and what's in its interest to partner with an organization like Handel and Haydn?
Oh, absolutely. So we are a statewide organization. We have over 500 members across the state. You know, I always say we are from P-Town to Pittsfield. Hundreds of small businesses, small to large businesses, who are our members, who we help, get connected, help network, and right now build community and resiliency, which, per the discussion previously is needed now more than ever. So we're able to make connections. We provide grants with amazing partners such as National Grid to small businesses to help scale up their businesses. We make connections to bank for loans. We do educational pieces. We go in and work with employee resource groups as some of our large corporate partners. We do a lot, and we serve both LGBTQ-owned businesses, individual solo entrepreneurs, creatives, and artists, in addition to law firms and big corporate partners that help us to continue to do our work and bring small business economy and invite every human to come to Massachusetts, be themselves, because we value them as a person, but we also value their skill set, their creativity, and the jobs they're bringing to Massachusetts.
And how did the connection with Handel and Haydn start?
An email. How like any good relationship starts is a cold email.
From you?
Not from me. So I began here as a new executive director 2 weeks before the election.
Oh, okay.
I took over the Massachusetts LGBT Chamber of Commerce, but H&H reached out and said, hey, these are the amazing things that we're doing. We would love to connect and meet with you. And we did. And it was an extremely fast, blossoming relationship. And, having an amazing Pride weekend this weekend and us getting to be a part of it, share, market, and then bring music to the state and the world.
You did a great job on that election, too, by the way. Congratulations. It's really worked out well. How'd you get connected? You're a fellow, right?
So I'm a Stone Fellow
What does that
with
mean?
Handel and Haydn Society. So Handel and Haydn is really great in that it has all these different ways that they're trying to connect with the community and diversify the audience and the players and the chorus and everybody who's involved in the organization. And the Stone Fellowship is a new fellowship. I'm an inaugural fellow. I started playing with H&H in the fall of 2023. And it's an effort to get underrepresented voices into the stages, into the halls, into the conversation. So I started in 2023. I also have a fellow, Amelia C., and she is playing this weekend as well. And it's an honor to be one of the inaugural fellows, and it's part of, like I said, many efforts to include many people into the community of H&H, and we have lots of different ways of doing that. Post-concert receptions this weekend is full of post-concert receptions and ways for audience members to engage.
You, speaking of engagement, did you create the term? One of our colleagues, Haydn, I know, spoke to you. Musicking?
I did not create that.
Okay, I never heard it before. What does it mean?
That's from a musicologist, but I always really loved it. It's the idea that music making is more than just the people on stage playing. It's it's us, of course, playing. It's the composer who wrote it. It's the people who are interpreting it. So the conductor, right? It's the people singing. It's also the audience. We do not, if a tree falls and no one's there to hear it, did it happen, right? So we need the audience, and we actually really feed off the audience. We were so happy to know that there's going to be a live audience performing on the radio, right? Because it's a totally different energy when people are watching you and engaging with you, and it's all part of music making, also called musicking. It's kind of a cheesy term, but I really like it.
I love it too.
Didn't you start at 5 on the violin? Did I read that?
Yeah.
You know, I mentioned this to Jim, but since you started at 5, I had the chance last week to go to the BSO Kids thing on Saturday morning at 10 o'clock. And before the concert, like at 9 o'clock, you can go with kids. And it's aimed toward children. It's also aimed with kids on the autism, Asperger's spectrum that may have, sensitivity to noise. And you could, the little kids, and my granddaughter's only 3, was that you did little teeny tiny violins that you could play with, and little teeny tiny tambourines and drums and stuff like that. And I thought, really, I don't know how you started at 5, but lots of people don't get introduced to classical music until they're really old, if at all. So it makes a difference.
Yeah, it makes a huge difference, and I think that H&H is always trying to get youth involved and has a great youth chorus, and they're doing so many things. And I've done lots of educational programs at schools around the city of Boston, but it's very different to be exposed at a young age, and I think it's ingrained in me at this point. I mean, my parents were always playing lots of different types of music, classical and rock and jazz and all of the different types of things. So starting at 5 was really lucky for me, and it also just, I think, makes me have a different understanding and love for everything that I get to do.
That's the voice of Carmen Levita Johnson-Pajaro. Alexandria Eberhard is also here from the LGBT Chamber of Commerce. Back to you, Alex, for a second. Does this take special meeting because of what's going on all around us in terms of LGBTQ people in this country? Does this concert series and the work you're doing take on special meeting, do you think?
Absolutely. And I'll take it back to Congresswoman Presley earlier, standing up, showing up, building community in defiance and saying, we're here, we're always here. People will have asked, this event is happening in March, it's not happening in June. And I'm like, well, we don't hibernate 11 months of the year and then come out in June, is that we exist every single day. We build businesses every single day. We spend our money in our communities every single day. And so it's really special to get to partner with organizations and nonprofits and businesses to do work year round, to continue to network, build our voice, and get to share it.
So what's happening on the 28th and 30th? It sounds like there are fabulous things from A to Z. Describe the whole deal as best you can.
So main events, we have the concerts tonight at 7:30 in Symphony Hall and 3 p.m. on Sunday. But before the concert on Sunday, I think is a wonderful Love Out Loud, I think, is happening. And we have post-concert receptions where all of the audience is invited to come. We're going to sing Love is Love is Love. And it's going to be led by some H&H staff, and that's going to be lovely. And everyone should participate. Please, Alex, come.
I will,
sing.
absolutely.
We need all the voices. This is supposed to be about musicking. It's about the community coming together and, really breaking the fourth wall, too. I think of the people you see on stage are going to be also in the room. We're going to have that. And there's going to be teens from Artists of Humanity who are doing a collaborative art project, and that's happening this weekend as well. Lots of activities. I really encourage you guys to all come out and see this amazing collaboration that we've cooked up for this weekend.
Anything you want to add to that?
No, I'm very excited, very grateful, amazing organizations. And it's these partnerships, even after H&H reached out, they've now used 3 of our other members to cater the event and bring in truffles and florists and, really kind of give back to the community and to continue to build those network. And, there's anybody can get involved with us, even if you're an individual who wants to support building equity in the economics of Massachusetts. If you're a small business, there's always a way we can help you. Please don't hesitate to reach out and build partnerships.
Carmen, historically informed performance is what the people describe. When you're holding a violin that's 265 years old, are you not nervous? I'm sure it's thrilling, but are you not nervous?
No.
Why not?
I've nicked it up. It can withstand a lot.
Yeah.
No, I don't get nervous with that.
You don't have an OtterBox on it?
That's what we need.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Does it feel different? I don't mean physically feel different, but when you're playing a contemporary instrument as opposed to playing something that a lot of people have played for literally 2.5 centuries plus, what does that feel like?
I think it definitely feels different. Like there's the weight of all these players before you when you're playing an old instrument, and also just like, I think I really loved history as a kid. I thought about majoring in history in college, and so I found my way. Music and history were always my two things, and I found my way to historical performance, it feels like a perfect melding of those. But I think, like I said before, it's just really special to know that these existed in the time in which the music that we're playing was created.
You know, we always ask musicians this almost every Friday, especially since people began getting upset about what was happening in the country. You're a professional musician, but Alex, you're not, right?
I'm not.
I mean, how much does it matter to be able to be involved in this music that kind of does take you away from the upset?
Oh, it's everything. Art in general brings us together. You know, music is a huge piece of that. My wife and we go to as many art performances, and not being a creative myself, I like to think when I sing I sound like Celine Dion, but that's probably not true. But
let's hear it and we'll decide.
Absolutely. Yeah. I drove on. Yeah, there.
That wasn't bad. It wasn't bad at all.
It was Adam Sandler, actually. It was not.
It was very Adam Sandler. Thank you. Very, very gracious of you.
Thank you.
But it brings us together, and it brings me immense joy. I've been going to the arts forever and loving it, and just the gift of art does bring us together, takes us to a new place, and I think just brings us immense joy. And so the gratitude that I have every time I get to step in, a symphony and, go to a ballet and the opera and musical theater, that is a space in which I feel wholly myself.
Carmen, I'd love to hear you answer, but you can't, because you have to take your headphones off and rejoin Thomas and Jenny. Well, and while you're getting over there, because you have to tune your thing a little extra, right?
Because those gut intestine things, and the strings.
Yeah.
And the bows, I should say.
So make a pitch. You have 30 seconds while we're waiting for the players to prepare, Alex. Make a pitch for the 28th and 30th one more time for people.
Please come out and support. Join us for events. It's an amazing weekend of joy, an amazing weekend of pride for every human to show up as they are and feel valued in this environment, which is more important than ever. And we have amazing talents that we get to come and watch and celebrate.
Okay, we're going to hear a little Beethoven now. We're going to hear Opus...
Oh, we should have said. Yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah, Beethoven's Opus 9, number 3, for those who are keeping score back home. And it's going to start as soon as Carmen gets her violin tune, which I think she has.
You ready, you guys?
We're ready.
Wonderful. Handel and Haydn. That was great.
We have been speaking and listening to Carmen Levita Johnson-Bahar and her trio with the Handel and Haydn Society, Thomas Barth on cello, Jenny Sterling on viola, Carmen on...
You're listening to Boston Public Radio with Jim Braude and Marjorie Egan. Just ahead, more smart conversation about what's going on in our community. That's right after an NPR news break, here on GBH News 89.7.
I'm Jared Bowen. Today on The Culture Show, the countdown to the White Lotus season finale has viewers obsessed, wondering who lives, who dies, and where does all that lust land. Plus, Conan O'Brien accepts his Mark Twain Prize at the Kennedy Center, denouncing bullies while maintaining his hallmark silliness. And Mayor Michelle Wu has her turn at late night, defending Boston on The Daily Show. We take on that and more in The Culture Show's Week in Review, today at 2 on 89.7 GBH.
You're listening to 89.7 WGBH HD1 Boston.
I'm Windsor Johnston. The White House says President Trump had an extremely productive call with the new Prime Minister of Canada today. In a post on social media, Trump said they agreed on many things and will meet immediately after Canada's upcoming election. Today's call comes amid escalating tensions between the two countries over newly announced tariffs. President Trump's plan to impose 25% tariffs on all imported vehicles is likely to drive up car prices in the U.S., but as NPR's Scott Newman reports, the move could weigh less heavily on EV maker Tesla.
The new tariffs are set to kick in starting in April. That's bad news for foreign car makers. But for Tesla, with assembly plants in Texas and California, the impact may not be as great as for others. Even so, foreign-made auto parts are also on the tariff list, and about 30 to 40% of Teslas use components made abroad. That's still less than for many of the company's competitors.
No matter, and it's really just a debate about who's going to pay the treatment. Nobody has been focused on how do we get ourselves less sick.
Some of the foods that are being targeted include brightly colored candies, cereals, especially those marketed to kids, cookies, chips, and soft drinks. The governor of Montana has signed legislation that restricts transgender people's access to public accommodations and school sports. Montana Public Radio's Shaylee Rhagar reports.
Republican Governor Greg Gianforte signed a law requiring transgender people to use public accommodations, like bathrooms, according to their reproductive anatomy. Public entities are civilly liable for enforcing the law, effective immediately. The ACLU of Montana filed an emergency request for a judge to block the law. The filing argues the policy is discriminatory and violates the state's right to privacy. Gianforte also signed a law prohibiting schools from allowing transgender athletes to participate on girls' and women's sports teams to take effect in July. Montana previously banned transgender students' participation in sports under a 2021 law, but it was struck down. For NPR News, I'm Shaylee Rhagar in Helena.
Stocks are trading sharply lower on Wall Street at this hour. The Dow was down 468 points. This is NPR.
Good afternoon. With the latest from the GBH Newsroom, I'm Henry Santoro. The names of more men accused of buying sex at brothels that operated out of luxury apartments in Cambridge are being revealed in court today. Today is the third and final day of the initial hearings for more than 2 dozen men who authorities say are among the most frequent patrons of the brothel network that was busted up in November 2023. The hearings began just after 10 this morning, and in previous hearings over the past 2 weeks, 23 men have been named in court, including Cambridge City Councilor Paul Toner, a doctor, and the founder of an environmental business. Well, it was on this date, March 28, 1985, 40 years ago, that the Boston-based band Till Tuesday, fronted by Amy Mann, released their hit song, Voice It Live, in decades. 52 degrees in Boston. This is GBH News.
Support for NPR comes from ARM, committed to delivering innovative, advanced computing designed to enable worldwide companies to unleash the capabilities and experiences of AI. The future of AI is built on ARM. ARM.com. This is NPR.
He is Jim Browdy. I am Marjorie Egan. Welcome to hour number 2 of Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH. Thank you. We're broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Hello again, Jim.
Hello again, Marjorie. We're joined now at the desk by our favorite local woman, media maven Sue O'Connell. Sue is co-publisher of Bay Windows and the South End News, commentator and news influencer. I think you explained that last week, whatever that means, at NBC Boston. You can see her in the docuseries A Body in the Snow, the trial of Karen Reed. It's streaming on Max and Discovery ID.
Yes.
What the hell's that?
Well, it was Discovery, and then there was ID, and then Warner Brothers put them all together as Discovery ID.
Sue, nice to see you.
Nice to see
excellent
you as well.
explanation,
Thank you.
by the way.
Thank you. The merging is hard to keep track of, the
I
mergers. And HBO used to be HBO Max, and then it became Max.
Oh, my God. Okay,
and then
thank
Twitter
you.
used to be, no, okay.
Whatever, thank you.
So you have been covering the Karen Reed trial, which is about to begin again. People know she's a woman accused of running over her former boyfriend, Boston police officer.
Was her current boyfriend.
That's right. He's no longer with us. He has died. John O'Keefe, who was a Boston police officer, that she ran him over and left him in the snow to die. This trial is starting again, but in a very weird twist. A woman that was an alternative juror, who's also a lawyer, who's also got 4 kids under 5. She is a busy woman.
And was pregnant during the trial.
Right. Didn't get chosen to be in the jury pool that deliberated. She was an alternate. But in any case, she's now going to be part of the defense team.
Yeah.
So what do we make of this?
So every single day, and I say this in an objective fashion, covering the Karen Reed trial is like covering the Trump administration. Like every single day, something happens that is unprecedented, and you're just like can't imagine how this is going on. So this woman who was in the jury box the entire time,
right?
She actually sat next to the person we've now learned to be the foreman. And it's funny. I used to refer to her in the posts that I did, because I did posts live from the courtroom, as fidgety, getting she wanted the window open, she needed a fan, she wasn't paying attention that much, and I realize now because she was a lawyer. Right, because she didn't need to pay attention to a lot. Like she's just like, all right, let's get it on, let's move forward. And then we realized toward the end of the trial that she was also expecting, because it became obvious.
Was she quite pregnant?
She wasn't quite pregnant, but when you're looking at someone every day for 3 months, you start to realize. And then, of course, we find out now that she did indeed have another baby. But she was very engaged in the testimony and paying attention. She and the foreman had a side joke, which didn't seem to be about something serious, but sort of like a secret word. Like if somebody says this, they look at each other and laugh, So she was very animated, and we all paid a lot of close attention to her. And then the time came for the clerk they actually use like a bingo thing to pick who the jurors are going to be, because it's 2025.
Is that what they did?
So why not use a bingo thing to pick the jury? So they cranked the thing, they pulled the numbers out, and she was chosen as an alternate after being in the trial the whole time.
What a bummer, by the way.
Was so disappointing.
Who wouldn't be? You spend all that time, weeks and weeks and weeks, and then it comes time, you have to give up all your time for work and be there every day. Then it comes time to deliberate. See you later.
Yeah, so you could see how crestfallen she was that she was an alternate. And now, come to find out this week, she has joined David Yannetti's law firm. David Yannetti is part of Karen Reed's defense. This woman was a civil attorney. She's joining Yannetti's firm, and I think it's pretty clear, she's going to bring the inside information about how the jurors were talking. A number of jurors went to the Commonwealth and to the defense to talk about what they think went wrong in there, and she's going to offer what worked and what didn't work, and there's absolutely no law against doing it.
No, there's none. But as I said to Andrea Cabral about this yesterday, she didn't need to be in the legal team to share that. They could have hired her as a consultant.
Yep.
The reason they're doing this a week before the trial is so it gets a lot of press, and if you end up being in this jury pool, you go, hey, a woman who knows all the facts decided to side with the defense here. That tells me something. I mean, that's
I
what
agree.
this is
I
about,
agree with that on several fronts. I have now stopped saying that one side is doing stuff to pollute the jury pool, because they're both doing it, right? So both the prosecution...
Pollute that's the job.
I know, that's the job. Yeah, I agree. I'll retract
Thank you,
Your Honor. I'll retract pollute. They're trying to put information out to influence the jury pool in one way or another. And she also wore pink, which is... I'm wearing pink today because it's the last day I can wear it before the trial starts, before the people on social media.
Oh,
think I'm
my
secretly
because you'll be
supporting-
taking
right.
sides.
Oh my God! You're wearing pink
Oh, that's
socks.
a
Oh my
riot.
God!
Because
So-
the Karen Reed people
Yeah,
wear
it's
pink.
spring, and I have a lot of pink apparently. So this is the last day I can wear it before the trial starts. So she actually wore pink at one point during the deliberations. That I can't remember if she was involved in it or not. If you have to be in the deliberations or not, I can't remember. Anyway, so so that I think is true. But also she works for a law firm. Right? So, if you're going to offer your expertise to another law firm, there's a good chance you're going to be asked to leave that law firm to go work for another law firm. So I think there's some stuff going on here, but, this is invaluable information for the defense to understand what arguments worked. A number of jurors have talked to both the defense and the Commonwealth, so, I don't think it's an unfair playing field, and anyone who watched the trial can clearly see what worked and didn't work on either side.
What day is this thing starting?
Jury selection starts on Tuesday. Last time they had a pool of 300 jurors. I'm told this time they have a pool of 1,500.
Wow.
Because so many people paid attention to the first trial and may not be able to fairly listen to the evidence.
And even during that period, I think it took 4 or 5 days to pick 19 jurors, which is also a larger number than usually. But in the end, they only ended up, I think, with 14 jurors. So that was the right call. So, we're just bracing.
Can we answer a question I know we're going to get during the trial?
Mm-hmm.
When you're a potential witness in a trial, to qualify or to be included, you don't need to say, I don't know anything about this.
Right.
You just need to say, despite what I know about this,
Right.
I am able to fairly judge the evidence
Yes.
and impartially judge the evidence. Because everybody, if you're in that, what county is that?
Norfolk.
If you're in Norfolk
Yeah, of course
County,
you know.
you shouldn't even be on a jury if you haven't heard
Right.
about this trial. It's
Right.
one of the biggest things ever. And one last thing about this before we go is my understanding was yesterday the federal appellate court rejected the effort by Reed's defense to have the second degree murder thing thrown out and the bottom charge, arguing that it was double jeopardy because the jury allegedly had unanimously voted to acquit on those charges, but were never polled on it, so they were never dismissed.
So the next step would be her team could bring it to the Supreme Court to have them consider it. And of course, the judge and everyone involved has already decided the trial is moving forward no matter what they do on that front. So that's a whole nother interesting can of wax there.
And to remind people, we asked you this last week, other than the fact that they're limited seating and it's a little different from the first time, you're going to be there whenever you can be there.
No, I'm
you're
not. I'm actually in
what
there.
happened?
So you're loud. Yeah.
Obviously, she's really happy about this. I can tell. Go ahead.
The people in charge of the managing the press for the courts have decided to use a randomizer. Instead of expanding from 10 press people in the press room to press bin to 12, not counting the two pool, we share images. And instead of, they say they're following the law that they can't show preference to any media people. So if you're actually a local media person or you just fly in for the first time, so they're using a randomizer every Wednesday to pick the 10 journalists who get to go in, 10 stations or organizations that get to send someone into the courtroom. And I didn't get picked. I'm number 11, it's a long story about being number 11 for me. But there's a chance I may never get in because every week
they
it
do
resets.
the same thing.
Or there's a chance that I'll get in every single week.
So wait a second. So theoretically, the same 10, I know it's unlikely, could get in every week, and 11 above would never get in.
Yes.
That's ridiculous.
So just to recap, in the state of Massachusetts, we're using a bingo thing to pick the alternative jurors. The verdict slip that they used in the first trial had been mimeographed so many times the jurors didn't understand it, and we can't figure out how to get 12 press people into a courtroom. But it's okay. We were founded in 1640.
Okay, good.
Okay, so Pam Bondi is now the Attorney General of the United States. Before she was Attorney General just of Florida, she was among the people that were joining in the lock her up chants about Hillary Clinton's use of a private email server, and concerned about information that she should be only using a government server. Now, the Attorney General has been asked about classified information shared in the Signal messages that involved Pete Hegseth and Marco Rubio and Mike Waltz and all these people in the Trump administration. Here's what she had to say about that.
Well, first, it was sensitive information, not classified, and inadvertently released And what we should be talking about is it was a very successful mission. Our world is now safer because of that mission. We're not going to comment any further on that. If you want to talk about classified information, talk about what was at Hillary Clinton's home that she was trying to bleach a bit. Talk about the classified documents in Joe Biden's garage that Hunter Biden had access to.
She's not going to investigate, apparently, what happened with...
Oh, wait a minute. I'm sorry. Hold on one second. I'm getting a call. Hi, Pete.
Hi, Pete.
I'm sorry. We're going to do what?
Funny.
Oh, okay. Sorry. I'll call you back. I'm sorry. It was somebody named Pete who just randomly called me and added me to a chat.
Yeah, she didn't mention that while she has no interest in investigating Pete and his buddies, there was a long time, I think it lasted 3 years, a Hillary Clinton investigation. We know Hunter Biden pled guilty to what he did. He's since been pardoned, and there was a long investigation by his father, I should say, and a long investigation into classified documents in Joe Biden's garage. But it is unbelievable.
So
the
look,
chutzpah here.
There's a number of things here that are true at the same time, which is what is making the Republicans' heads explode. There are many things that our government classifies as top secret, which they shouldn't, right? So we overclassify things, number one. Number two, they're very loosey-goosey with where a lot of these classified documents go. So almost everybody who has worked for a presidential administration on both sides has ended up at home with a classified document in their file. The document probably doesn't need to be classified. So all those things are true. And of course, to Hillary Clinton, remember Colin Powell also had a personal email server that he used.
Oh, that's right. Yep,
so it's not
that's
like,
right.
so these things are wrong and right and sloppy. But the sloppiness of this administration, okay, this is funny, except it's not, okay? People's lives, our armed forces, China is listening, Russia is listening. They are on private cell phones on this Signal app, right, which you know that people have access to, right? The fact that they accidentally added, luckily for them, an editor who has strong moral convictions and courage and didn't just go to X and say, hey, Houthis, look out, they're coming for you. This is what I found. I mean, it is, any one of us could make such a smaller mistake at work and get fired immediately. And these are the people who are supposed to be in charge of keeping us safe. It is outrageous. And the fact that they're not investigating it is just another layer of BS.
By the way, did you see the story about all the fighter pilots that were quoted in the New York Times saying how upset they were about this because secrecy is paramount, and then they have to tear up all the information that they get about their war plans. And as we all know, on that Signal conversation, they were the types of planes, the times,
and they're pushing back, saying it's not war plans. Right. Okay, so we're going to play what the word is to call this. You were sending information on a Signal app. By the way, I heard today that they, you can, the thing about Signal is you can have your messages automatically delete, and they're encrypted. It doesn't mean that it's completely impossible to get. They didn't even have the messages set to delete right away. So they're like the worst criminals on the face of the earth. It's like 60 days. That's why this judge is going to be able to get it, because they didn't have it set up to immediately delete. It's like ridiculous.
Can I add a couple of things? First of all, Judge Boasberg has now ordered them. Boasberg, to not delete the messages.
And he's also doing the Venezuelans that got sent to El Salvador.
The second thing we should mention, which we never do, is that civilians and children were actually killed in this raid, which at some point should be discussed. Yep. But number three, you're focusing on the underlying thing, which is legitimate. I've been around a while. I've heard hack-like attorneys general who do whatever the president tells them to a point, like Barr did until he turned on Trump. I have never in my life heard an attorney general her words are almost verbatim what every right-wing political analyst said. Oh, it was a successful mission. How about Hunter Biden? How about Hillary Clinton? How about answering the damn question? Why are you not investigating like has been done in similar situations, even though not quite as egregious? The fact that, and I say this every day about a different thing, I assume the those who were Trumpified in this country don't care about the fact that the Attorney General of the United States is Trump's in-house lawyer and political supporter. I mean, and by the way, if you don't know, the General's office, the Justice Department, is supposed to be independent, even though obviously the Attorney General is nominated by the President of the United States. It is disgraceful.
And she was the Attorney General of Florida, by the way. She canceled an investigation she was doing into Donald Trump at that time because he gave $25,000 to
Here's
her
the really
campaign.
bad news. Bondi and Rubio are the two most qualified people in the administration.
That's right.
Okay? This is what these are the two people we are looking to be our light of justice and smartness, is Rubio and Bondi. And this is where we are. How many days are we into the Trump administration?
60 plus.
I mean, it's like, how much more endangerment are we going to face? And also, this also impacts our allies who already don't love us. Are they going to share information with us?
Well, not only that,
No,
our allies are
you know,
trashed by Walz and Hegseth.
And so is Trump. And Trump he doesn't even have a clue what's going on. So it's
And Tulsi
just
Gabbard
awful.
was up. It's unbelievable, the chutzpah of the lying. Tulsi Gabbard was up lying about this whole thing in front of Congress, and Rubio is saying that being worried about Palestine is the same as being pro-Hamas. Yeah. I mean, it's just lie.
Well, we should also say, I said this yesterday when Andrew Natsios, the former administrator of USAID under George W. Bush, was with us. There was no stronger supporter, Republican supporter, maybe any supporter of USAID than Senator Rubio. Now that he is Secretary of State Rubio, he's fine presiding over the elimination of vaccines for 75 million poor kids around the world.
Don't worry, Jim, because the Chinese are going to go in and vaccinate.
That's what
I
Natsio
swear
said.
to God, I mean, in 10 years, we're going to check back in, God willing, if we still have a democracy, and Russia and China are going to be in all the places that USAID was, and everyone in the continent of Africa and everywhere else is going to be totally in the tank for China, and we're going to wonder what happened, because the reason USAID existed was not because we're good people. Not at all. The soft power that turns into hard power is what it was about. And that's, I said before, I no longer argue kids are dying, babies are dying. It's how it's going to impact you in 10 years. We're going to be a poorer and more dangerous nation.
Think about this. You think college is expensive now? Foreign students often
They pay a lot.
They pay the full freight a lot of times and enable universities, these hotshot universities, to give scholarships to Americans who don't have a lot of money. Well, you think college is expensive now?
Yep.
Wait till all these foreign kids stop coming here, and then it's going to be really bad.
Yep.
Okay, so quick answer to this, because we got to get to the Vances going to Greenland before you go, because they have landed. Very quickly, so in Pennsylvania a couple of days ago, a Democratic state senator, a Democratic candidate for the state Senate, wins a seat that hadn't been in Democratic hands for many, many decades, I think almost a half century. And it was a seat that Trump had, a district that Trump had carried by 15 points. Admittedly, one little piece of Pennsylvania. Elise Stefanik was nominated to be the UN representative for the United States, withdrawn yesterday because Trump and Speaker Johnson are nervous. Their majority is so narrow that if they lose her, they could lose the whole thing. Well, in the next few days, there's a special election in Florida. And while Walz, it's National Security Advisor Walz's seat in Florida, he won it by 33 points. There is great anxiety that there could be a huge upset. So I guess my long-winded question is, even though even Democrats are not happy with Democrats, and apparently the growing antipathy towards the Trump agenda might cause there to be balance in Congress, meaning the Democrats maybe with a couple of elections could take back the House. Is that a pipe dream?
No, it's not a pipe dream. It's, I was talking to Jamie before I came on. A lot of my MAGA friends have been very quiet lately, and I've been hearing stories about their son-in-law who works for the VA who got fired, and I didn't think it was going to be him, or another son-in-law who was a veteran who was getting a certain mental health service that they now tell him is going to be delayed. So I think that people who thought that what the Trump administration promised to do, the campaign promised to do, are shocked it's happening to them. And that may mean they don't show up to vote. It doesn't necessarily mean they're going to vote for the Democrat, but they may be disillusioned enough to not vote. The challenge here, of course, is what what shenanigans the Trump administration and the Republican attorneys general and secretaries of state and election boards, which we were worried about during the presidential election, what shenanigans they may put in place to decrease the ability for a fair and honest election.
Could you tell us I don't even know what day the Florida election is. Could you find out the special election? Just let us know. By the way, an anonymous texter is taking issue with you. I hate to correct you on the air, but they are. You said a minute ago that Rubio and Bondi were the two most competent people Trump hired. This texter says, correction for Sue, the most qualified person Trump hired was Stormy Daniels. And so I think that is really...
I am wrong. I admit when I'm wrong, and I am wrong.
That is an excellent point.
Yep.
Oh,
and he did pay her. That's the other good news. Did he pay her?
Yeah.
Special,
we don't know.
Well,
we
actually,
don't know.
did pay her. Special, well, we don't know. Special election is Tuesday, by the way. Thank you,
So
Jane.
we do a little good news. People,
we're not doing Greenland?
Well,
you want to do Ed Sheeran? Do Ed Sheeran.
Let's just say we're going to Greenland. No one wants us there. Okay? If I had a time machine and said 10 years ago, the vice president and his wife are going to go to Greenland and no one will meet them, you'd be like, what are you smoking?
Okay.
And by the way, we have former ambassador to Denmark, which actually is in control.
Oh, right.
Rufus Gifford is going to be here with us at the library on Tuesday. He was also the head of protocol for Joe Biden.
As long as you mention
Right, he was in Denmark, yeah.
A lot of people speculate about Mrs. Vance, Usha. She was supposed to go initially with her kid. Now she
A lot of people, meaning Marjorie, speculates.
Right. I'm speculating. And now JD is coming. So do you think she said, I'm not going alone to face these hostile dogs?
No. I think they thought that if JD went, they would have to meet, because they sent an advance team to go meet with businesses saying, hey, can the second lady come? And they said no. And then they said, all right, well, how about if the vice president and the second lady come? And they said no.
Okay.
So I think they were trying to up the ante a little bit.
I would not bring my young kid to Greenland at this particular juncture.
Why is that?
Because people went after him when he was on the street walking the 3-year-old kid.
Can I give a backhanded compliment to JD Vance?
Sure.
He's the pit bull that goes out. So he's going to go to Greenland now and say terrible things about Greenland and Denmark and all those kind of things. So that's why they're
No, he actually did it in Europe. Yeah. That's right. That's a very good point, actually.
Yeah. And they all talked about how pathetic on the Signal chat that I think Hexex called Europe pathetic. And it was terrible that we had to bail them out.
He did. Capital letters, pathetic.
Okay.
Oh, I can hear my father saying, why do I have to write my birth date like this when I saved them during World War II? He's speaking to me from the past.
That's right. That's right. So Ed Sheeran, people know him. He's a great British singer-songwriter. He's got this connection to this opening of this pub up on the North Shore, and he was on Jimmy Fallon's show this week talking about it. So here's Ed Sheeran with Jimmy Fallon talking about how people can get into his pop-up pub in Ipswich.
To get entry to it, you have to go on your old phone and find an old message that means a lot to you, or a video that means a lot to you, and send it in. And then afterwards, we're going to project them on the walls and stuff. It's going to be cool. We're serving Guinness and like tots, and it's going to be cool.
I just realized, since he's British, Marjorie Taylor Greene would have said, "We don't give a crap about your opinion, Ed Sheeran."
That's right.
We don't give a crap about your opinion.
Thank you. That's what I was trying to say. Thank you.
So
that was to a British reporter, if you missed yesterday.
I'm a little confused. Is this like a couple of days stand-up?
Yeah, it seems like he's doing... So first of all, Ed Sheeran is great.
He is great.
And he's a great person, and we've seen him twice. We've seen him in we've seen him in Foxborough, and we've seen him in a small theater. I think at the
Orpheum.
Orpheum, I think, when he did his small thing.
Really? Did you get free tickets?
No, I don't. Believe me, I don't. I used to.
Rude question.
She's
always going to such...
I used to.
She's all going
Back
to these
when I was the
concerts all the
music
time.
director of Kiss 108 in the 80s, I went everywhere
Just
free.
checking.
Now
go ahead.
Anyway, he's the type of performer who can play out on the street corner, in a hall, in a stadium, and he loves what he does, and you can tell. So it's just he also does a lot of fun things, like on YouTube. He had a thing where he was in a room and people walking by, they said, "Hey, do you want to come in and see Ed Sheeran?" They're like, "What are you talking about?" And then they'd go in and he'd give a one-person performance to them. It was hysterical. So this, I think, is a setup for a video that he's shooting. But because
you can't just go, by the way.
No, you have to follow the rules to go. But I think because he loves music, he loves Boston. He was at the pub over by Government Center, Dubliner around St. Patrick's Day. So he just loves fun. He loves being places. He loves surprising people. And rather than just set up something to record a video, I think he's actually making it a pop-up night here.
Before you go,
is that where John Davidson is, Ipswich?
No, he's in New Hampshire. He is
Okay.
Salem, New Hampshire.
'Cause I was thinking, wouldn't that be great? A John Davidson
We love John
and
Davidson.
Ed Sheeran duet.
Yeah.
Okay, before you go, I want to make an admission. I said to Carmen before, I never heard the word musicking, and she looked surprised, like everybody heard of it.
I never heard
This
it either.
is much more embarrassing. You mentioned he plays on the street. Until I saw the movie Once, which is one of my favorite movies of all time, I never heard the term busking.
Are you kidding?
Exactly. Well, I knew the reaction would
And
be.
you were in Cambridge?
I was in Cambridge.
And
I
that's
saw
why-
Tracy Chapman in the subways busking,
Yeah.
but I didn't know that's what she was doing.
That's why you
Nobody
were a
believes
one-term
that.
city councilor. Jim,
Exactly.
Right there. That's why.
right. Okay, goodbye. Nice to see you, Sue O'Connell.
Sue O'Connell, thank you very much.
Great to see you.
We're so glad our media maven, Sue O'Connell,
We
is
are.
back. She's
Very
a
glad.
publisher at Bay Window, South End News, commentator, and news influencer, la-di-da, at NBC Boston, where you can see her in the docuseries A Body in the Snow, The Trial of Karen Reed. Is streaming on Max and Discovery ID, and it is really fascinating. You did a great job in that. Everybody did a great job in that. After a quick break, we're going to talk to Boston Medical Center's Dr. Catherine Gergen-Barnett. She's here to talk medical issues. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH, live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
President Trump's cuts to the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration has some scallop fishermen facing stricter regulations on their catching limits.
Some are welcoming the cuts, saying that the government has been their downfall. There's too many regulations, and I don't share that opinion.
We'll talk smaller scallop catches at the dock on All Things Considered from NPR News.
Today at 4, here on GBH News 89.7.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you. And Furniture Consignment Gallery, curating pre-owned luxury home furnishings for over 30 years. Current inventory is available to view in their showrooms in Burlington, Natick, Hanover, and Plymouth. More at FurnitureConsignment.com. And the Massachusetts Health Connector for Business. New premium value plans can help small business owners find and offer accessible employee health benefits. Learn more at mahealthconnector.org/business.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Marjorie Egan, Jim Browdy, live at the library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. Mayor Wu will join us on the 8th, whenever that is, 11 and 12 for an hour of Ask the Mayor. We're joined now at the library by Dr. Catherine Gergen-Barnett, Vice Chair of Primary Care Innovation and Transformation at Boston Medical Center, Associate Professor at BU Medical School, and an Aspen Institute Health Innovators Fellow. Hello, Doctor. Hello. Nice to see you.
So, Doctor, we've been talking a lot about, everything, all the slashing of the VA and the National Institute for Health, et cetera, et cetera. Now we learn that the Trump administration is cutting billions from health services in the states. So you're at Boston Medical Center, which is not, it serves some of the poorest people around here. What is this going to mean?
I know, first of all, just to take a step back in terms of thinking about what's happening nationally. So it's really hard to keep up with all of the news. So, you mentioned it. There's 10 million folks from NIH who have been dismissed this week.
10,000.
Within all the different health research grants, I apologize, 10 million. As I was saying hello to the Handel and Haydn people outside, one of the people was telling me his spouse works in long COVID research. So there's been many, many cuts. The latest from yesterday morning was looking at a $12 billion cut that is coming from the initial funding that came out as the emergency response for COVID-19. So it was pandemic response. But this was then congressionally administered to states to say, look, you don't need to use it for pandemic response. We recognize there's lots of gaps that happen in public health. Go use it for that. So we have, both locally and nationally been using it a huge deal to think about addiction treatment, mental health, funding of community health services, augmenting the way that we track viruses. So thinking about all that wastewater data that we were using during the pandemic and being able to use it for future pandemics. Having a better system so that we can actually see when you got your vaccine at CVS, maybe in a different state, and you come to your primary care physician here in Massachusetts, that we can see those things. All of those things were being built by this budget. So I know Governor Healy has said, let's wait and see what we can do here in the state. So we've talked about this again and again, a lot that happens statewide versus federally. But we absolutely know that locally, our hands will be tied doing a lot of the work on mental health, addiction, community health center. We know New England itself has at least $100 million that has been allocated. And so, the shoe just dropped. We're going to have to wait to see what the other shoe is and the way that this can impact us. And we're not going to see it tomorrow. We're going to see it months from now and years from now. And the data, will, I think, be very devastating for
also,
public health.
One of the things we've talked to people like you about, and Dr. Jha, who from now the Dean of Public Health at Brown, who was obviously Biden's COVID guy, is that healthcare is not just providing healthcare.
Correct.
That food is medicine.
Yeah.
Some of your colleagues have written prescriptions for housing.
Correct.
For people. We read this morning in the Boston Globe $1 billion nationwide cut in food banks.
Yeah.
Obviously, that means that food availability at an affordable or free price for low-income people in Massachusetts around the country is going to be affected. Obviously, there's going to be a housing impact about cuts there. So it's almost in every direction. You serve some of the most vulnerable people in Massachusetts. So people should not go home and say those cuts to healthcare spending are horrible. They're horrible. So are the food cuts. So are the housing cuts. Every piece of a person's life who you serve is going to be affected. So what do you say in 6 months, if these things become real, if the lawsuits fail, or if Congress and the Republicans have the courage, if they really believe in this crap, to actually stand up to Trump and say, we'll do the cutting rather than you unconstitutionally? What do you say to a patient when you can't deal with them anymore? You can't tell them to go to the food bank. You can't provide what you need to provide. What do you do?
I think, those are the kinds of conversations we're already having to have. And Jim, I think you said it very eloquently in terms of, food and housing. And, we've talked about the work that we've done at Boston Medical Center in terms of jobs and a job training program and the way in which that's improved people's health. The fact is to think about medicine or public health to be just about, what HHS now wants to focus on, which is infectious disease, right? Mm-hmm. So that's what they're saying. They're really going to put all their eggs in the basket of infectious disease. I think somebody who was quoted in a New York Times article, who actually is a medical director for a bipartisan policy institute, who I actually just had a conversation with earlier this week, I think said it very eloquently. It's saying, this takes us back to 1948 kind of mentality about what impacts health of human beings, right? So we now know everything that you just beautifully said. And the fact that we're now going to have to be saying, okay, we can just take care of you if you need HIV medication or if you have tuberculosis, but we can't make sure that you have a fridge so that you can actually refrigerate your insulin. Right? So it's so short-sighted. And I do, again, I come back again and again to saying, what is Massachusetts going to do to fill in these gaps? The fact is federal government is just trying to push everything to the states, right? This is part of the play that's happening. It's hard to see sometimes because it's a sandstorm and we can't keep track, but this is part of what the move is. And so how do we as a state respond to that? Through our Department of Public Health. I know Boston Public Health is also really thinking through what the lack of funding will mean for us. And then how do we have, nonprofits and others step in to fill those gaps? It's going to be very messy.
We're talking to Dr. Catherine Gergen Barnett.
Speaking of infectious diseases, we're reading now where Robert F. Kennedy Jr., who's now running health in the United States of America, that back down in West Texas where they're having this epidemic of measles, they're seeing patients who've been made sicker by what he recommends. This alternative therapy, the vitamin A and the cod liver oil? Yeah, so before he was secretary, RFK Jr. came out and said, cod liver oil is a miraculous cure for measles.
in part because it has vitamin A in it. So just so people know, vitamin A actually does play a role for people who are hospitalized with measles. So if somebody actually has severe symptoms with measles, we give them over the course of 2 days 2 very small doses of vitamin A. Why very small doses? Because vitamin A is one of the vitamins that's called fat soluble. So it means that you can't just urinate out extra vitamins. So say, when you take vitamin C, you're like, oh, it doesn't really matter. It all comes out in the wash. Vitamin A, vitamin D, vitamin K, vitamin E, all of those things get stored in your body. So you can't just, if you get given too much, it impacts you. And in these cases, you see all these young kids showing up with liver toxicity, having massive impacts because they're being given this cod liver oil that has huge amounts of vitamin A without anybody saying, actually, that's really dangerous. There are certain things that are, look, I'm very much a strong believer in food as medicine. I think it's a terrific thing. But just because something is natural doesn't mean that it's safe, right? And so how do we continue to monitor the information that's coming out? And, honestly, it goes back again to the fact that RFK Jr. is not a physician. We've said this before. He has no background in medicine. And I know that he's learning a lot on the job, but there are dangers of what you can say.
This is not what you want to learn on the job.
This is cutting your teeth pretty quickly.
Can we put this in context for a second, though? Because I worry when you go down a litany of horrors, I'm sure there are people who say, all you people talk about all the horrible things. Things are okay. However, there's a history for this thing that's happening in West Texas. We discussed this with you once before.
Yeah.
He made similar recommendations about snake oil kind of things when he was in Samoa. And everybody whom I've ever read who's not a total Kennedy sycophant has said, I think it was 83 people who died. The majority were kids under 5 years old. And a guy I'd never heard of until a few weeks ago, I've seen on CNN, the governor of Hawaii is a doctor, Josh Green, who was actually in Samoa for part of this.
Correct.
And he's laid it out. These kids are dead because the people bought into this message that he was doing there. So for those who think this is typical scare tactics from people who aren't crazy about Trump or his secretaries, there's a history of his horrible advice leading to the death of people around the world.
Yeah, and I just, as a really important, also kind of finer point on the counterbalance, do I think that healthcare is perfect the way it is? Absolutely not. Do we spend more on healthcare and have worse outcomes than any other country with our income? Absolutely. Do I think there's places for us to be making budgetary cuts? Yes. Do I think we need price transparency? Yes. There's so many places where we can improve healthcare. The slash and burn techniques are going to leave us devastated and it'll be very hard to rebuild. And Elon Musk, the way in which he does business is he says, let's get to the point of breaking something, and then we know we've gone too far. The question is, can we actually break our public health system and build it back? That's the big question that remains.
We're talking to Dr. Catherine Gergen-Barnett.
Well, tell us about prenatal and vitamin care for obviously pregnant women.
Yeah, so this is a piece of good news, which is, again, going back to states and what states can do. So Governor Maura Healey and Secretary HHS of Massachusetts, Kate Walsh, came out this...
Your former boss,
my
right?
former boss and a huge mentor and friend of mine, came out and said that for women on Mass Health in Massachusetts, so about 500,000 women are now eligible to get prenatal vitamins and birth control pills, so something called the O pill, which is just progestin only, for free. So obviously not usually the same woman getting both. But what a huge low piece of hanging fruit in terms of improving public health and the health of women and families here in Massachusetts. So these are the kind of headlines that we need to really elevate and celebrate and talk about in terms of what can be done locally. And I'm really, really grateful that they had the foresight to do that.
By the way, and that is wonderful news, but people should not, we should have said this earlier, labor under the misconception that because Massachusetts is funding good and important things like this, that they can just fill the hole that the feds are creating
100%.
that we were talking about. Healy admits they can't.
Right.
Wu admits they
Correct.
can't. They'll do the best they can, but there's a limit.
We'll do the best we can.
And can you explain something to me? Let's go back to bad news, because that's what we mostly deal in here.
Especially around health nowadays.
So if you watch CNN, which we do, Margie and I, and if you watch 60 Minutes, they basically do commercials for people who are like 110 years old. Okay. And when you watch these commercials for, it's almost nonstop pharmaceuticals, often the side effect warnings, which are statutorily mandated, are longer than the commercial for the drug.
And they say it really fast. It may kill you, 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 may kill you.
Okay, so that alarming. I get that pharmaceutical companies are. I didn't know till this morning. There's a story in the Wall Street Journal about Propecia, which is the regrow your hair deal.
Yes.
That says, which you knew, but again I didn't. I don't know if you did, Marjorie. That the hair loss medication like Propecia comes from telehealth companies, and for some reason that I don't understand at all, if you're a telehealth company, you have no obligation to disclose the known side effects. But if you're a drug maker, assuming they were releasing Propecia, they would have an obligation.
Correct.
So what's the rationale for one disclosing and one not?
It's actually, I think it's a very problematic loophole. So the reporters at the Wall Street Journal actually were like secret shoppers, and they went on this, his website, and there's these other websites that kind of market, in this case, what is called Propecia, which is a medication for men with hair loss. And you have to actually click through several screens to get to the warning. The warning that is so important for Propecia is that, well, two very important warnings. One is the sexual libido loss for a lot of men. It's a common side effect. Why is this? This medication, so there's, I think biology is incredibly elegant. It takes testosterone, that men have circulating, and there's usually an enzyme that converts it to something called DHT. Finasteride, or this medication, works blocking that. So you have more testosterone in your system, which means that you actually will have more hair growth. But DHT is really good for libido and for men feeling virile or whatever the word is, not viral. Maybe virally viral.
Viral too.
But very few of these telehealth companies are disclosing this. Additionally, there's actually been a lot of research saying that this medication can increase suicidality, and depression. And so actually the Wall Street Journal had a really, a hard coverage of this 36-year-old gentleman who was feeling insecure about some hair loss, and then had a massive set of physical side effects in terms of his sexual function, but also became suicidal. And it had no idea it was connected to this medicine. It was only when he went to a doctor and disclosed he was on this medicine that they were able to piece it together, and he was able to come off and recover. So be careful what you see. And actually a lot of this became very popular because of the Super Bowl. There was lots of ads in the Super Bowl. I think
that's
people
right, of
probably
course.
remember.
That's right, yeah.
A lot of the his ads, and people got really excited about it.
You see a lot of these. The one I see more often is the Rogaine thing that's supposed to help men, and then there's the
women
mifepristone, not mifepristone.
Yeah, that's totally different.
That's different. That has to do with
birth control.
But there's an M1.
Abortion.
Sorry. There's an M1 that people get for hair loss, and
there's also GLP-1s that are come out now too for weight loss that actually don't have a lot of efficacy behind them either. So, again, I'm all into innovation and creating more access for people to, get healthcare, but just making sure and just remembering a lot of these, almost everybody's out there for some money. And so what's the impact on you? And just making sure that you're taking care of yourself.
Yeah, before you leave, we had, what was Paul Revel's son's first name again? Nicholas Revel.
Nicholas Revel.
From a group called Casper, which I think is based in Providence. Am I right about this? On the other day, who deals with addiction issues. And we were talking about GLP-1 drugs. Everybody knows, I assume everybody knows, diabetes to begin with, then weight loss, and then virtually everything.
Yes.
And he's talking about how the research, more of which still needs to be done, suggests that GLP-1 drugs can address in a positive way addiction, not just alcohol addiction, which was his primary thing, but gambling, shopping, whatever it is. Have you ever seen a drug that, what are these called? What kind of uses are these called? What is a term for whatever it is? Have you ever seen a drug in your career?
No,
that
never.
Almost every week has another thing that it addresses.
But I also haven't seen a drug that's so quickly going to bankrupt the United States of America. And again, I think it's a perfect way to tie in what we were talking about earlier, which is you kind of come in as a bull in a china shop, you slash all of these cuts around public health, you think, and then you offer the most expensive drug to hope that it's going to address, all of the lack of food that's going to be coming to schools, healthy food, things like that. It's like, again, public health needs an infrastructure that actually takes care of people. And the GLP-1s, they're a fantastic drug, but we shouldn't be so dependent on them. We should really make sure we're not getting so far down the river that we have to be fished out by this incredibly expensive drug.
But we are so far down the river.
I
agree with you in the abstract.
But let's build towards the future in this way. And it's, and it's leaving health systems so in the hole right now when we're already really struggling. So I think, again, it's a terrific medication, but I just want to make sure that we can either get it down to a price point where it's more feasible for the state and for the country, or make sure that we're addressing the things that it's trying to fix.
Amen.
Okay, it was minoxidil, not mifepristone.
Oh, minoxidil.
Is that a hair deal?
It's a hair
Yes.
thing. Yeah, for women, I think.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Dr.
Thank you.
Very much.
Nice to see you, Doctor.
Wonderful seeing you.
Barnett, Vice Chair of Primary Care Innovation and Transformation at Boston Medical Center, Associate Professor at Boston University's Medical School, and an Aspen Institute Health Innovator Fellow. Thank you very much, Doctor. After a quick break, two more things. You're listening to Boston Public Radio, 89.7 GBH, broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
Support for our programs comes from you and Supermicro and NVIDIA, accelerating AI with a wide range of AI servers and the NVIDIA AI Enterprise software platform. Supermicro is committed to driving AI infrastructure breakthroughs with rack-scale innovations. And the Boston Speakers Series, announcing its upcoming season at Symphony Hall for 7 evenings, including Dr. Anthony Fauci, Ken Burns, outlier author Malcolm Gladwell, and geopolitical economist Pippa Malmgren. BostonSpeakers.org. And Turkish Airlines. The Stopover in Istanbul program offers passengers connecting via Istanbul Airport the opportunity to explore the city's history and cultural life. More information at TurkishAirlines.com. And the Office of the Massachusetts State Treasurer, the Unclaimed Property Division, is holding unclaimed funds from utility bills, uncashed paychecks, savings accounts, and more. To see if you have unclaimed money, you can visit findmassmoney.gov.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Mark Regan, Jim Browdy. Thank you all. Live at the library, streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. It's time for two more things. Marjorie, as always, except for yesterday for some reason. You go first.
Well, I want to mention that for 3 days now, hundreds of Palestinians have marched through the streets of this northern part of Gaza, demanding not only an end to the war, but an end to the rule by Hamas. The New York Times has been reporting on this. It's the boldest rebuke of Hamas since the war with Israel began. And it makes clear that a significant number of Palestinians are basically willing to risk their lives to protest. And Hamas has arrested and tortured and killed protesters, in some cases gruesomely dragging bodies through the streets on the back of motorcycles for everybody to see. The Times quoted this 26-year-old man who helped organize the protest. Hamas needs to go. He talked about, we don't have anything left to lose. We've already lost our lives and our homes and our money. So I mention this today because, as I said earlier, the Trump administration continues to conflate two very different things. They don't differentiate between people who are pro-Palestinian, the citizens of Palestine who've been slaughtered, and many women and children and men as well. They don't differentiate between that and supporting a terrorist group, Hamas.
I agree.
It also reminds us again that there are significant numbers of Palestinians who are taking to the street willing to face terrible retribution for speaking out against Hamas. And also, I mentioned it, so we should look back at ourselves here, comfortable in the United States of America, the place we call the home of the brave, where we're watching the most powerful politicians, the most powerful universities, law firms, huge corporations just cower to placate Donald Trump.
So great to say that. Speaking of cowering, that's sort of what I'm talking about. We're introducing a new feature. Unfortunately, it's likely to be a regular feature. We're going to call it Capitulators Update. ABC News, the law firm Paul Weiss, Columbia University. Today's editions, the law firm Skadden and Arps, and the University of Michigan. In the wake of that Paul Weiss firm cutting the deal with Trump to provide $40 million in free legal services to Trump's pet causes, rather than challenge the unconstitutional executive orders like some law firms are doing. Now this elite law firm, Skadden Arps, as I mentioned, has had talks with Trump's people about a deal to avert that kind of executive order being imposed on them. Let's call it anticipatory cowardice. Then there's the University of Michigan, one of the great universities in the country. And it's self-described. This is what they call it, the national model for American higher education on diversity, equity, and inclusion. You know about that? It is gone. It would expand what they're doing now, prohibitions on diversity statements relating to things like faculty hiring, all promotions, awards, virtually everything that had a diversity component that they were bragging about. Why not change the mascot, Marjorie, from Wolverine to MAGA, which would stand for Michigan All Gaga over Trump. In any case, a premier law firm, one of America's great universities, joining with so many others who are cowering, as Marjorie said, in the face of Trump's assault on democracy, the right to counsel, and academic freedom. Sadly, we're going to have to add more to the list. Before we go, we have a brief clarification we want to make. Earlier this month, Charlie Sennett was on BPR, commenting on global and national issues. We discussed a number of things. Charlie spoke glowingly about the Tesla plant he visited in Austin without disclosing on air that his son worked for Tesla. He also brought up Elon Musk's Doge, which he both criticized and praised, even though at the time his son was in discussions about joining Doge, which he did a few days later.
In a piece which ran earlier this week on the Columbia Journalism Review's website, Charlie wrote this. Quote, journalists have an obligation to be transparent about any potential conflicts of interest or even any perceptions of one, close quote. So we urge you to read that piece. But in our effort to offer full transparency, we thought we needed to share all this with you, our listeners. Okay. Coming up after the 1 o'clock news, we're going to be joined by NPR media correspondent David Folkenflik. He's here for this week's edition of Media Analysis, our segment that we're calling Press Play. He's going to talk about what happened Wednesday.
If it's been a while since you made a gift of support to GBH, now is the time to step forward and renew your support for your home for trusted local news and conversations that matter to you. Renew your membership now at gbhnews.org.
This week on Under the Radar with Callie Crossley, WNBA teams are selling out games across the country. Women's rugby players are stars on and off the field. And Boston's women's soccer team is ready for its 2026 debut. Women's professional sports teams are finally getting their time in the spotlight. That's Under the Radar with me, Callie Crossley, Sunday night at 6 here on 89.7 GBH and the GBH app.
You're listening to 89.7 WGBH HD1 Boston. Online at gbhnews.org. GBH News. What matters to you?
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Windsor Johnston. Vice President J.D. Vance and the Second Lady have arrived in Greenland. Shortly after landing, Vance said he's looking forward to visiting a U.S. Space Force base on the island.
Mike, we're going to talk to the command and some of the Guardians about what exactly the base does and all the important ways it contributes to national security. We're going to get a briefing, of course, about what you guys do every day. And then we're going to talk just about, as you've heard, we have some interest in Greenland from the Trump administration. So we're going to talk a little bit about that.
The trip comes amid heightened tensions between the U.S. and Greenland. President Trump has repeatedly said that he wants the U.S. to acquire the Danish territory for national security purposes. Emphasizing its sovereignty, Greenland and Denmark have snapped back, saying that it's not for sale. Embattled Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth met with Philippine President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. today. During the meeting, Hegseth reaffirmed U.S. commitment to defending the Philippines against growing threats from China. Michael Sullivan reports from Chiang Rai.
Hegseth's meeting with Marcos is the first of several aimed at reassuring allies in the region about the Trump administration's support. He said Washington and Manila must stand shoulder to shoulder against Chinese aggression. His visit comes amid rising tension between the Philippines and China in the disputed South China Sea. China claims almost all of it, despite an international court ruling refuting that claim. His visit comes amid rising calls for his resignation for his role in the recent scandal over details shared inappropriately on the Signal message.
Newsroom, I'm Henry Santoro. Unionized faculty at Wellesley College are on strike, citing an impasse after 10 months of contract negotiations. Non-tenure track faculty walk off the job yesterday over a range of issues like pay, workload, and benefits. Leah Okurumura is an instructor in the biological sciences and a member of the Wellesley Organized Academic Workers. She says non-tenure track faculty are underpaid despite playing a critical role at the school.
We do a lot of mentoring. We mentor independent studies. We help students with research. We advise them. And in addition, we just spend a lot of time getting to know our students. And it's one of the things that makes Wellesley College a really great place to be as a student.
In a statement, the college says they've offered the union a package that would increase pay by almost 30% over 4 years and that it stands ready to continue with negotiations. Harvard University has agreed to voluntarily pay the city
running errands and other tasks at progressivecommercial.com.
Welcome back to hour number 3 of Boston Public Radio. Thank you, Jim Browdy and Marjorie Egan. We are broadcasting live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News. I want to mention we're going to be back here on Tuesday with the former ambassador to Denmark, Rufus Gifford. We can talk to him about the Vance's trip to Greenland because Denmark owns Greenland at the moment.
He was also head of protocol for Joe Biden, so we
That's
can talk
right.
about that as well.
That's right. And we're back again as well on Wednesday and Friday. Another edition of Ask the Mayor, Michelle Wu. That will be April 8th, also here at the Boston Public Library. She'll take our questions and yours. Hello again, Jim.
Hello again, Marjorie. Time now for our Friday media analysis segment, Press Play. It's a tricky proposition as a journalist having to cover a congressional hearing that puts your boss in the hot seat. That's exactly what NPR media correspondent David Folkenflik did on Wednesday at the so-called DOJ subcommittee hearing that was titled Anti-American Airwaves, Holding the Heads of NPR and PBS Accountable. There were plenty of highlights and lowlights in the 2.5 hours of questioning. Marjorie and I learned a lot, including that there are multiple definitions of the word editorial. Here's Kentucky Congressman James Comer learning that important lesson from the CEO of NPR, Catherine Marr.
First of all, I want to recognize your concerns. One of the first things that I did in coming in May was to beef up our editorial standards. I directed my editor-in-chief, who, by the way,
Why is NPR even doing editorial?
I'm so sorry.
Even do editorials?
I don't mean editorial in terms of opinion editorial.
Do you even need opinion? What does it matter with opinion? If you're a federally funded entity that's supposed to provide the news, can you not provide the news?
Of course,
fair and balanced?
Of course, Congressman. I mean editorial standards for our journalism was to beef up our editorial practices, bringing in more editors to make sure that we have more points of view reflected in every story.
Sort of SNL-like, I should say. In any case, NPR's David Folkenflik was in the room where it happened. He joins us now on Zoom. David, it's a pleasure to have you here. Thanks so much for your time.
Pleasure. Thanks for having me on.
So, David, you covered this soup to nuts. How did NPR and PBS do in this hearing? Or could you call a winner or a loser, or was it even, or what?
So, let's start actually with that James Comer exchange that you just played is a congressman from Kentucky. He's actually the chair of the overall committee that this panel was a subcommittee of. For him to attend is a thing. For him to weigh in is a thing. And as we heard, his questioning got a little derailed there, both by that and by his focus on NPR's coverage of him a few years ago. What struck me about that exchange was at once you kind of want somebody in that position to understand the distinctions and get that she's saying, look, we're trying to set standards for news that are high here. That's all that editorial standards mean in that context. But to be fair, a lot of the language that journalists use about their profession, about their standards, are maybe a little removed from what everyday language is. Sometimes the public doesn't understand the things that we take for granted as journalists, that the care that we give, the things that get us out of bed in the morning, that we're not on the hook getting a call from some Communist Party official in Cuba to figure out what stories we're going to cover, right? And so, to be honest, on a lesser degree, the fact that the congressman was tripped up on that actually didn't bother me that much. What I would say was that this was a moment at which there was going to be no, if we're looking for wins and losses, no real victory for either of the big public broadcasters, NPR and PBS, that were hauled there. From the outset, it was clear that Chairwoman Marjorie Taylor Greene essentially was going to call for wiping away all federal funding for public broadcasting. It's what she said at the top. It's what she said at the bottom, as you said, from soup to nuts. What I will say was there was nothing that was so inherently viral that it blotted out all the other stories in the constellations, right? It wasn't as though major networks spent hours rehashing this. This was going to be a bit of a drubbing, and they kind of took their lumps, but they also pushed back and respectfully indicated the ways in which they feel that public broadcasting writ large and their networks in particular are important for civic society in America.
David, you mentioned Congresswoman Marjorie Taylor Greene. I understand she asked about the drag queen on Let's Learn. Was that true or was that not true?
She was asked about a video that was presented of a performer in drag. It was an episode of which I didn't have great knowledge going in, and I'm not sure we had a huge amount of enlightenment coming out. But this was a performer performing in drag, essentially a children's hour. It looked very much as though it was kind of a COVID-era element where there was kind of a, to the tune of the wheels on the bus go round and round. This performer said, the hips on the drag queen go swish, 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 although you weren't watching the hips. For Marjorie Taylor Greene, she described this performer as a child predator, which seemed to me to be a fairly weighty and serious accusation made without any underlying evidence. But she has a strong take on, the role of trans people in American life that, certainly rallies her base and offends many other Americans. This was a video that the head of PBS said, actually, this didn't run on PBS itself, that it was put up on WNET, the New York member station, a large originator of content, in error and taken down. Taylor Greene pushed back on that, but that's kind of where it was left.
Okay.
So David Folkenflik, I want to clear the air here. While it is true we do not get messages from communist leaders in Cuba telling us what to talk about, we hope we get chat messages from the National Security Advisor to the president if things go well.
Maybe he'll send you a signal.
I hope so. I hope so. So every time we have pledge here, we go out of our way to say only a small percentage of our funding comes from the federal government. It's primarily listener support. But as people, I hope, learned the other day with that person from Alaska Public Radio, there are parts of this country, particularly more rural areas, that are hugely dependent on federal funding, without which the people in those areas would get virtually no news, no alerts about things that matter. Can you talk a minute about that part of the Corporation for Public Broadcasting network?
Yeah, we're going to break it down for a moment and get wonky. But first, let me do my typical disclaimer, which is, my paycheck is paid by NPR. I've worked here proudly for over 20 years, and yet I'm not here to speak for NPR. I'm covering it. Sometimes they like the way I cover it. Sometimes they don't. We have actually, I believe, the most robust protocol in the country of any major news organization in keeping things clean. And to their credit, CEO after CEO has respected that. So let's acknowledge that. That said, the Corporation for Public Broadcasting basically got allocated a certain amount of money. It was $545 million in the current fiscal year, $535 million current fiscal year. And the vast proportion of that goes out to the stations. It's split on a sort of 3-to-1 breakdown of television to radio. And on average, each public radio station in any event gets about 10% of its funding from federal sources. We get directly about 1% of our funding from federal sources. And you might argue that since we get some fees from the station for the programs that they air, like Morning Edition, All Things Considered, Fresh Air, that we get another several percent, maybe 3 to 4% in all, indirect and direct. When you say 10% of, on average, gets taken by a public radio station, there's wide fluctuation there. So for some stations, particularly rural stations where you don't have a strong corporate presence that can spend money for underwriting, or a huge and deep well of philanthropic resources available, that amount could get up to 50%. That is fully half of every dollar for each year's operating budget comes from federal source. That is this congressionally chartered corporation for public broadcasting. If you wipe that out, you sweep away, NPR can survive that. But I worry for a lot of stations out there, and certainly that's the argument that NPR's CEO Catherine Marr made yesterday, as well as PBS's Paula Kerger made yesterday. And TV is more expensive, as you know, at GBH than radio. So there is the concern stations might consolidate, but that a lot of these stations may go away. Currently, NPR reaches more than 99% of the country. PBS reaches more than 99% of the country, and people do not have to pay $1 ever in order to access that. And that is the promise. We are not fueled by corporate agendas. And I've watched internally for over 2 decades, and that is true. People can sometimes question our story judgment. People may sometimes be right to question this news judgment or that news judgment. That's all fair game. We do it. It's there for public consumption and criticism. But when you're talking about the system, it both provides news, it provides a civil forum for discussion of public affairs, and it's also an integral part, as Paula Kerger and Catherine Marr argued in front of Congress on Wednesday, an integral part of the emergency and disaster relief preparing process for many communities and states in which they operate. So when you had, for example, the terrible floods that kind of wiped out much of Asheville, North Carolina, and surrounding areas, I believe it was Blue Ridge Public Radio that was really the only major news source locally available there for 2 weeks. That matters.
People forget that not everybody has broadband all across the country. The gentleman from Alaska Public Media was talking about that too, right? The news alerts and weather alerts that they get, earthquakes, landslides, extreme weather in Alaska as well.
And not only does not everybody have broadband, although increasingly I hope that they do, but it's a question of what's available on that broadband, right? Yeah. Are there paywalls? Right. Are there locally based reporters? Are there people with expertise? Do they have the knowledge of how to build something up from scratch when disaster happens? Or are they just kind of scrambling in the moment? All endeavors are welcome, and many commercial newspapers and many commercial outlets make their stuff more available in a time of real need and crisis, and that needs to be saluted and acknowledged. But what you've seen in community after community when it's hard hit in a time of extreme weather patterns, is public media often really stepping up to the plate, and public radio often really having the newsrooms to do that.
We're talking to David Falkenflik, media correspondent for NPR. We're talking about the hearings about public media Wednesday in the House of Representatives. And we should put in context, we mentioned this the other day, before the hearings, Pew people did a poll, and only 24%, again, before the hearings, of Americans said they wanted to see public media defunded. I have one last question about the hearings. I think a lot of people listening to the show had never heard of Uri Berliner, the former editor at NPR, before he put out a memo saying there was an absence of viewpoint diversity, for lack of a better expression, months ago. Obviously, that came up at the hearing a lot. What's your... Well, you can feel free to comment on what he had to say, but you should also feel free not to, because you're a reporter there.
No, that's fine. It's all fair game.
Well, then tell us what you thought about that, and tell us how damaging you think it was to the public media cause that one of their own comments on their work became fodder for those who want to destroy what we do.
So Uri Berliner, as you say, is a senior editor at NPR. He actually is a senior business editor at NPR for many years. I'm on the business desk, so I've worked closely with Uri for many years, consider him something of a friend. He's a smart an accomplished journalist. He wrote a piece about a year ago for the Free Press, which is a haven for journalists and writers and thinkers who believe that the mainstream media has become too reflexively liberal over the years and has drawn a strong audience and financial support for that. He argued that NPR had strayed beyond its past, was no longer as fair-minded as it once was, and he pointed to the coverage of several stories to do so. He particularly looked at the Hunter Biden laptop story, the Wuhan lab leak theory, that's how the coronavirus got out in Wuhan, China, as opposed to coming from these basically exotic meat markets in public serving Wuhan in China, and on a few other stories as well, the way in which NPR treated coverage of the connections between Russia and the 2016 Trump campaign, for example. I differ with him on some of that. I acknowledged some of his points as well. For example, I think NPR on the Wuhan lab leak virus accepted what public health officials, and particularly in federal government, were saying. And that in sort of dismissing that as a possibility, certainly still not proven, very low level of consensus on how that actually broke out. But also that failed, as did many other major news organizations, to disclose to listeners that one of the sources they were relying on to discredit that theory himself had ties to the lab in question in Wuhan, public health researcher who's very highly regarded by many folks, but nonetheless, that's a key element that should be disclosed to audiences. So I talked about that. Where did I talk about that? I talked about it on Morning Edition. So, we did ultimately really explore a lot of these issues in a fairly full way that a lot of news organizations don't do. Uri, I think, alienated a lot of our colleagues, both by talking about it outside the tent, taking it to a place that is sort of reflexively critical of NPR, but also with some of his critique of the way in which the push by our late CEO, John Lansing, who had called the need for diversity and inclusion in our ranks and our audiences a North Star guiding his both moral and business strategy for the network, that he felt it had clouded our thoughts on other kinds of diversity in turn, including viewpoint and ideological diversity. My thinking on it as a media critic would be that if you look at a lot of the mainstream media through the election of Trump, which was a shock to the system, including to the journalistic establishment, the Me Too movement, which made a lot of folks question whether journalists had listened closely enough to the stories women told about being abused and wrongly treated, to the George Floyd moment, which cast a new light both on policing, police brutality, but also on the ways in which journalists had relied on police officials as authoritative rather than sometimes knowledgeable and informed, but definitely interested parties in a lot of the incidents being described. Not necessarily dispositive in all accounts. Certainly, we now have footage from iPhones that often disprove official accounts, right? And subsequently, COVID itself and the isolation that caused, you saw the pendulum swing in newsroom after newsroom. The Los Angeles Times, perhaps the Boston Globe, certainly the New York Times, the Washington Post, Fox News even, and the Wall Street Journal, and NPR, the pendulum swung in terms of thinking about ways in which certain stories had been excluded, certain voices had been excluded. And the question is, does the pendulum always rest at the perfect point if it's set in motion to a different place? And I think there's been efforts to calibrate that. You saw Catherine Marr in her testimony in remarks not necessarily uniformly embraced, but certainly acknowledged, said that she thought that there was consensus among news executives that we were not aggressive enough on the Hunter Biden laptop. And that's a conversation that could be another whole episode. That, in fact, last spring, she was able to secure additional funding and focus on instituting new layers of not exactly standards, but review and scrutiny to make sure not only are individual stories fair and full, but that is the broad scope of our coverage fair. That is, are we doing 3 bites of the apple and in the same way on 3 different shows in ways that maybe in the aggregate is overkill, but one hand doesn't always know exactly what the other hand is doing. There's more coordination and consolidation of knowledge there. And that, in fact, was the editorial standards process that she was talking about that drew the confusion from Congressman Comey.
Before we leave the hearing altogether, I loved the Representative Gregorio Quezar, who is questioning a gentleman from the Heritage Foundation, talking about how much money Miss Piggy and Daniel Tiger, very popular among the 3- and 4-year-old set now, had cost American taxpayers versus a certain other politician. Here is Representative Quezar.
How many millions of dollars a month do taxpayers spend for Daniel Tiger to play golf?
I have no idea who.
The answer is none.
Okay.
To your knowledge, has Miss Piggy ever been caught trying to funnel billions of dollars in government contracts to herself and to her companies?
That's a silly question.
The answer is no. How about Arthur the Aardvark? Has he ever fired independent government watchdogs who are investigating his companies? The answer is no. Madam Chair, I'm told we're here to talk about government efficiency, but Daniel Tiger has not blown $10 million of taxpayer money to play golf with his friends, but Donald Trump has, just at the beginning of his administration. Miss Piggy hasn't been caught funneling billions of dollars in government contracts to herself, but Elon Musk has.
I just enjoyed that little interchange between Kezar.
Although, let's do a fact check there. Miss Piggy was part of the Muppet Show, which was not part of Sesame Street, right?
That's right.
But nonetheless, the point he's making, of course, is there are more serious things for an offshoot of the House Oversight Committee, particularly one on spending, to be focused on the public broadcasting. But to be fair, let's acknowledge it is legitimate for lawmakers to consider both how money is spent from the taxpayer purse and whether or not it's an appropriate thing for the government to be doing. The case that Paula Kerger, that Catherine Marr of NPR, and that their colleague from Alaska Public Media were making was this actually leverages almost $7 for every federal dollar spent, and it's a vital part of the way communities across the country, including in a ton of red states and a ton of red communities, help understand themselves and help understand one another. But this committee session was not set up to be a careful distillation of testing whether or not this is still an appropriate thing for government to be doing more than 50 years after the founding of public broadcasting. This was not set up to say, hey, look, a libertarian approach to government is more appropriate. This committee was, and it wasn't even really set up to drill down deeply on the question of whether there is ideological bias inside NPR's newsroom and to a lesser extent PBS's programming thought. This was a clear-cut quest at virality. I don't think they got a ton of moments. There were questions that were difficult. I think the most difficult were for Catherine Marr, our CEO, to answer questions about her past social media postings and her own ideological beliefs. She's 41. She came from the world of tech and sort of digital media, but not journalism. And a lot of these posts were from 5 years ago and earlier, at a time when she wasn't contemplating leading a major company, nonprofit company that is, has essentially journalism at its very core and definition. And she said she regretted some of that. These are fair questions for her to answer in exchange for being able to lead this, I think, important institution. But they weren't there for enlightenment. There's more about heat than light.
By the way, those tweets by Marr were savaging Donald Trump, which I'm sure you read. By the way, just one last thing on Miss Piggy. We had Andrew Natsios with us yesterday. He's the former head of USAID, who has a quote in the New York Times. He said, the biggest weapon against al-Qaeda and Islamic extremism is Sesame Street, and he believes it. Before you go, David, we've had a bit of a debate on the show. Everybody knows about a couple of billionaires having a major impact on editorial policies. Los Angeles Times killed the editorial endorsing Harris. Washington Post under Bezos did the same. They killed the editorial cartoon with the tech billionaires on bended knee to Trump. They killed Ruth Marcus's column criticizing Bezos' ownership of the paper. She subsequently resigned after 41 years. And we have Chuck Todd on with us, formerly Meet the Press every week. Marty Barron was with us last week too. And we asked them the same question. Should we worry about this kind of censorship or maybe even self-censorship? And Ruth Marcus admitted in the New Yorker she had self-censored. She had made two of her op-eds, her columns, softer than she actually felt. Should we worry about that censorship or self-censorship trickling down to the reporters, not editorialists? Chuck Todd said he'd spoken to a number of reporters who admitted to him they were self-censoring. Marty Barron said he's spoken to a lot of his former colleague reporters of the Washington Post. It doesn't happen. Should we worry about it or should we not?
I would say that they're worried about it inside the Post. I did a lot of the reporting about that very topic, and as well as at the LA Times, and they're concerned about it. I must say that I don't see a real evidence of that in the newsroom at present, and I'm not being told of such moments, except when it comes, of course, to the coverage of the Post itself. where there have been a number of columns and stories that I've written about that have been killed by the then opinion editor David Shipley, who himself was against some of the decisions of Jeff Bezos to kill the Harris endorsement. He was against some of these decisions, but he was the leader of the section at that time before he said, when Bezos completely redefined the point of the section to focus squarely on, he put it, personal liberties and free markets, and to get away from essentially other emphases, Shipley said, this is a moment when the Trump world, I think it needs scrutiny. I'm going to step away from this. They are concerned about it there. They're watching it. I'm watching it. We're going to see. I think that what's interesting to me is not whether Patrick Soon-Shiong at the LA Times or Jeff Bezos, the Amazon's executive chairman and founder at the Washington Post, have the right to do what they're doing with the editorial and opinion sides.
Of course.
They do. They absolutely have the right to define it the way they want. That's not meddling. That's their prerogative. But it has implications. The Post has been, something of a bulwark of civil institutions and the democratic spirit in the age of Trump. And not necessarily resistance way, but in a very firm-footed journalistic way. And were they to back down from that, that would be an incredible concern. For Bezos, the amazing thing is I was able to document that they are hundreds of thousands of paying subscribers down from where they would be right now in a time of heightened interest about Trump had they not killed that endorsement, had they not, essentially redefined the opinion section, had they not canceled, the cartoon and done some other things. Bezos is such a smart businessman that you've got to think he's doing this to preserve the billions of dollars of business that he has with the federal government and his various enterprises, Blue Origin and Amazon. And in that case, you wonder if push came to shove, would he in some way decide to pull back on the Post's editorial independence or on the funding he provides the newspaper if it were to hurt his ongoing enterprises? So far, to be fair, he does not seem to have done so.
We only have 1 minute left. I hate to belabor this, but I'm obsessed with it. So if you can bear with me for a second. You said one thing that Marty Barron said to us almost verbatim. I've been watching this. There's no sign of this. How would you know? If you hadn't read Ruth Marcus's piece in The New Yorker, would you have known that on 2 of her columns she had written weaker criticisms, for example, of Bezos than she intended? You wouldn't, right? None of us would.
I think that there's concern that there may be diminished appetite for incremental coverage showing bad actions by various Doge people. The bar is high at the moment. I've got to say there are so many seemingly mind-blowing developments, seemingly essentially transgressive developments, right? By major players in this administration. I think the bar is higher on sort of petty graft or small-time, I was going to use a word we shouldn't broadcast, but small-time thuggery in government. It seems to me as though you just have to set the bar high for what you're covering. I'm not sure that's pulling back your horns. I think if there's a good story, Rupert Murdoch has allied himself with Donald Trump, but to his credit, he does not seem to have told the Wall Street Journal not to do aggressive reporting. They've done some very good accountability reporting there. I see that in the pages of the Washington Post, though it is run by 2 former top Murdoch news executives in Will Lewis and Matt Murray. But I'm going to be closely watching, and believe me, my phone rings off the hook when something outrageous happens over there.
David, we follow your work religiously, and we really appreciate your time today. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you very much, David, for being with us. We've been speaking with David Folkenflik. He's a media correspondent for NPR, and we do appreciate him taking the time. Coming up after a quick break, another lighter transition here at Boston Public Radio. For the ages, really, Jim.
Marjorie's always embarrassed. If you're a faithful listener to the show, every time we have a serious discussion, we're about to go low rent, which we do every single day. Marjorie, you can feel her discomfort.
Well,
and it's who we are,
if you
Marjorie.
have some very distinguished person here, and they're still here, and you're saying, now we're going to switch to
discuss spring cleaning.
Who is the a-hole? That's always a little embarrassing, too. But we're not doing that today because that's on Thursday. But we are talking about something that I think everyone can relate to.
Yes, they can.
Spring cleaning.
Yes, they can.
God help us. Call or text your tips and tricks. We're talking about spring cleaning because spring is almost here. You're listening to Boston Public Radio 89.7 GBH live from the Boston Public Library and streaming at youtube.com/GBH News.
President Trump's cuts to the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration has some scallop fishermen facing stricter regulations on their catching limits.
Some are welcoming the cuts, saying that the government has been their downfall. There's too many regulations, and I don't share that opinion.
We'll talk smaller scallop catches at the dock on All Things Considered from NPR News.
Today at 4, here on GBH News 89.7.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you. And Mass General Brigham Health Plan, ranked number 1 in member satisfaction among commercial health plans in Massachusetts by J.D. Power for the second consecutive year. Details at mgbhp.org/everyday. And Celebrity Series, presenting the Alvin Ailey American Dance Theater, featuring Mr. Ailey's timeless masterpiece, Revelations, April 24th through 27th at the Bach Center Wang Theater. Tickets at celebrityseries.org.
Welcome back to Boston Public Radio. Jim Browdy, Marjorie Egan, live at the library stream, youtube.com/GBH News. We're a week into spring, and the signs are all around us. The weather is warming up. Birds are chirping somewhere. Baseball season began yesterday. And Marjorie is still looking for the charger to her dustbuster.
Ah.
Thank you. It was my pleasure. With the bloom of spring comes pressure to take part in spring cleaning. Of course, not everyone is thrilled at the prospect of having to declutter their home, clean out their Tesla's frunk, etc. We're curious if you are. At 877-301-8970, do you consider spring cleaning a, sacred practice? An opportunity not just to clean your home, but to cleanse your spirit? I do. Or are you more akin to my wonderful co-host, Marjorie, who's filled with panic at the prospect of having to spend a whole weekend breathing Clorox fumes and old dust bunnies from last October? Luckily, I have some tips for people who have a hard time. Excuse me. Luckily,
listen,
I have
I'm
some
small
tips
potatoes compared to you, let me tell you.
for people who have a hard time getting started.
You have tips.
So it's spring, that's what I said. It's spring cleaning, and you on Boston Public Radio at 877-301-8970. Let me not speak for you. Are you a spring cleaner, Marjorie Egan? Go ahead.
You know, I have a lot of trouble cleaning. I bought the Marie Kondo books.
Yeah.
I buy these declutter things. That Simple magazine, they always have the declutter things.
Not that simple.
I did over Christmas vacation.
What'd you do?
The drawer in the kitchen is filled with all this, it's just overwhelmed. I
Junk
can't
drawer.
even open it, the junk drawer. I spent
What'd you do?
2 hours. 2 hours.
How many things did you throw out?
Well, I threw out a lot of things,
Oh,
but you know what
that's nice.
happens? Like 2 weeks later, it's all full again with the same thing. So it's really difficult. But this piece in Vox has a lot of good ideas about what you do. I think it's really hard to give away sentimental things.
No, it's not. You photograph them.
Is that what you do?
You take a picture of a sentimental thing that you've never looked at, never used, that smells of mold in the basement, and you put it up, you lean it nicely against something good. I'm serious. And you take a photograph and you have it in your phone, or you have it wherever you have it, and you have it forever. How much sentimental, this is fairly serious, so I maybe shouldn't do it. My mother, before she had my father as her husband,
that's right,
was married to a guy who was a wonderful guy who was killed in World War II.
I know, it's terrible.
And so, in any case, I obviously didn't know him. I hear he's a spectacular guy. I've got in my basement like 5,000 letters between the two of them. When he was serving, I ever told you this? And the paper's smelly because they've been in the basement, and they have water stains. So I read through maybe 100 of them. I took the most beautiful ones. I took photographs, saved one, and the rest of them I put in the box and threw them out.
That is really impressive.
Well, it is. And by the way, let me tell you something.
Especially for someone who had his mother's ashes in the trunk of his car
for
10 years.
What do you mean had? Why'd you put that
you
past
get the
tense?
letters. It gets the primo treatment and the
I put
ashes.
the letters next to the ashes. But here's my point. Well, I don't know what my point. Oh, I do know what my point is. Remember when Shirley Leung?
Would you read this in some book? How'd you decide to do this?
I did read it in some book.
Yeah, that's
actually.
very
I did.
impressive.
Okay, but wait a second. Remember when Shirley Leung talked about getting those pods or whatever they're called twice out there in Milton where she lives and loading them up and how satisfying it was?
It's very satisfying.
I have to say, it was hard for me to throw out a lot of crap.
Yep.
I'm really good at it when it comes to spring. I am going to give tips in a minute. And when you do it, this level of satisfaction and completion you feel in your soul is totally the opposite of the feeling of disorganization and panic
Listen,
that you feel every day?
I am so impressed by people. I had this friend, when I was in my 20s or 30s, he used to arrange all his books and all his, in the days when people had albums, by alphabetical order. It was unbelievable. And Marie Kondo had this thing that I did do, which was really life-changing.
I can't.
To arrange your closet from the longest to the shortest things. So instead of having your shirts,
way you did that.
I have, and I've kept it, and it's life-changing, Jim. Instead of having all your shirts and sweaters mixed in together, you have your sweaters over here, your shirts over there, and you have your long pants down there, long skirts, and it moves up like this.
You don't get rid of anything.
No, but it saves you time.
Okay, but here's
you're not searching through your closet looking for shirts.
But you touched on a tip that this Vox person got right. And by the way, the number is 877-301-8970. Want to know about how you approach spring cleaning and that sort of thing. You know what this person is? A woman who wrote this thing, the Vox thing.
We got a good one from Jamie.
Volpe. I want to. Well, you can read that in a second. I group everything together, all the shoes. If you see a pair of shoes, here's my first tip, and you're looking at a bunch of crap, and you say, well, I sort of like those shoes, so I'm going to keep them. You're making a mistake. Put together all the shoes
That's
you
right.
have,
You're supposed
which is
to put
probably
them
like
together.
Imelda Marcos.
That's right.
And when you look at 50 pair of shoes or 14 pair of shoes, then you realize you really don't need 14 or 50 pair of shoes, and it's easier to throw them out.
And
So
Marie
that's tip
Kondo
number
tells
one.
you should thank the things you're going to throw out
I don't do
for
that.
their service.
I'm not thanking
that
them.
makes you feel less guilty, particularly if it's sentimental things.
Yeah, okay. 877-301-8970. Read the Jamie thing, get it out of the way, and let's move on.
Here's Jamie. The other day in Studio 3, that's where we work in Brighton, Jim screams at me through the glass.
I did
Jamie,
not scream.
Get in here.
Well, I did do that.
I go in there and he goes, what do you think? And Jamie looks around and it looked just like before, but the trash was full, so I assumed that he must have cleaned. I don't know. Check the YouTube stream on Monday. Has it been cleaned
By the
up?
way, even though he's mocking me, it was a feeling of great satisfaction. Have you ever cleaned up the studio, ever? No. Okay, I cleaned up the studio last week, and even though Jamie pretended like he didn't see that I'd made a big change, it feels, when you have decluttered a part of your life, we worked there 2 days a week, Marjorie's bored. 877-301. She doesn't even want to hear what I have to say about this.
I'm reading the text. I'm listening to you and reading the text at the same time.
You're scornful of my position.
Well,
on
because
this.
the few times I've driven in your car, Jim, one time that smelled so bad of rotten milk, I couldn't
that was
even
when my
sit in
kids
there.
were children,
And
were
another
babies.
time it had like mushrooms growing in the back
I did
of
have
the trunk,
mushrooms in the back.
and I was afraid to sit down on the seat. So to take cleaning up advice from you, I'm a little suspicious.
Can we take a call or two?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Megan in Jamaica Plain, thanks for calling.
Hello, Megan.
Hi. So something that I've been purging and spring cleaning is all my tchotchkes.
I love that word.
Yeah, that's hard though, right?
So what do you do?
It is. Well, I have to really look inside myself and see, do I really need 30 rabbit figurines?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And?
Well, I don't, but I will keep some of them. Like I have my grandmother's rabbit figurines from the 70s. But like the home goods, like random, non-meaningful tchotchkes, I'll just put them on the street.
And by the way, Megan, is it Megan or Megan, by the way? I feel bad when what's your name?
It's Megan.
Megan, okay. How satisfied did you feel? That's what I'm trying to explain to Marjorie. How good did you feel when you put some of those rabbit things out on the sidewalk? How great does that feel?
Oh, it feels amazing because I'm in all these free groups and I just say, hey, here's a box of free rabbits or free rabbit figurines.
Free rabbit figurines.
And people flock to them and I'm bringing somebody else that joy, and that feels good.
That is a beautiful call. And Marjorie would need a few rabbit figurines if you're ever in Brookline, Megan. Thanks for the call.
There's a tip. I think not everybody has rabbit figurines, but lots of us have coffee mugs. We have too many coffee mugs.
Yeah.
So you're supposed to get all your coffee mugs together, collected in one category.
Yes.
Did you say the 3-second rule?
No.
Okay. And you go through them and decide which ones you want to keep and which ones you want to get rid of. And if you hesitate for more than 3 seconds...
Dump it.
No. If you hesitate for more than 3 seconds, you're supposed to keep it.
Well, they're wrong.
Okay, well, it's an automatic keep.
If you can't make a decision that you want something in 3 seconds, why would you keep it, Marjorie?
I don't know, Jim. I'm just following the instructions there that the people say, and since I'm not good at this, I think they know more than I do. By the way, you talked about taking a picture of the love letters between your mother and her first husband.
Mm-hmm.
Well, a texter just says, Marjorie, before we throw him out, would you please take a picture of Jim?
That's funny.
That's a good one.
People are laughing. Obviously, they agree with that. 877-301-8970.
Oh, somebody says you should have saved the World War II letters and donated them to a museum or historical society because it's part of history.
Okay, it's fine.
Like
Too
those
many.
great letters. Remember all the letters that we had? Ken Burns' great thing about the Civil War, all those
I'm not
letters.
Ken Burns. Okay.
You're not Ken Burns, no.
Now, here is another one. This anonymous texter says, while spring cleaning, I found 6 smug mugs, 32 various GBH pieces of clothing, and 47 Eton emergency crank radios.
Yeah, there's a good
I'm
donator.
in sort of the same boat.
Thank you very much.
Exactly. 877-301-8970
Marcia in Winchester, thank you for calling.
Hello, Marcia.
Hi. I grew up in a small apartment in Brooklyn, so I've spent my whole life getting rid of stuff because I never had room to clutter.
Yeah.
But I have a rule. If you haven't used something or worn something in a year or so, if it doesn't have sentimental value, give it away because there will be somebody out there who can use it. And my other rule of thumb is move. If you move out of your house, you're going to have to clean, and you won't be able to take a lot with you. The only other comment I have, Jim, is I don't know if I agree with you about letters from World War II. I have a box. I must have 2,000 letters in there between my parents. I bought an archival box, and they're now, protected with archival paper. I am not getting rid of those letters.
Okay, Marcia, I'm not going to be harsh. I'm not going to be harsh. I'm going to be nice. Someday, you and I are both going to be dead. Do we agree? You don't?
Yes, my daughter wants them.
No,
we'll be dead, but my daughter wants them.
If your kid,
there you go.
Oh, if your daughter wants them, you made the total right decision.
Right.
So
I also found some letters written in I think Yiddish from 1932, 33, 34 from Russia. I'm never getting rid of those letters.
Well, that's you really put me in my place, Marcia. Thank you very much for the call.
Okay, here's a text from Nina who says she loves listening to us, but she's been very upset about and distracted by all the stuff in the windowsill at the studio. And that's true. I have a lot of mugs and sandwiches and aluminum foil
I didn't
and
do
stuff.
those, by the way.
Yeah,
I have to do those
I have them
before
on
Monday
the
at 11.
Yeah, well, that's on the sill actually. It's behind me because of my
it's on
lunch
the
and everything
sill.
else. Listen to this. Joanne from Newton says what she does to solve this whole problem of accumulating clutter. She moves every 5 years. How about that one? John and Beverly, Jim, has the existential question.
Which is?
How does Jim store his Dickies?
Oh, that's funny. That's really... By the way, it is pathetic that you're as amused by one word
Dickie.
and one behavior.
Well, it's not just the word. It's the vision of it. It's the image of it. Because some of us remember those from our childhood, and they were problematic then, and they're problematic now.
By the way, this is a good one. This is actually, this could happen. I have friends who've done this. Anonymous texter, I hired Doge to clean my shed. Instead, they loaded it with TNT and blew it up. They also got my grandma's Social Security check. I got a bad deal. Well, that sometimes happens. That is anonymous texter. It's very sad.
What kind of animal has such a mess that mushrooms grow on whatever car seats are made of?
Now,
oh my God!
By the way, I may, because you say things about me and they stick with me. The reason there was a milk smell is it's right after I met you and my kids were young kids.
That's right.
And they drank milk and they spilled it occasionally.
Right.
The mushrooms.
Okay, we don't give a crap about your opinion.
Exactly. That's what I was about to say. Thank you, Marjorie Taylor Greene. Mary in Riverside, Rhode Island, welcome to the show. Hi, Mary.
Hey, I've got an idea. It's called the calendar cleanse.
What is it?
You start with the first day of a month. Pick a month. It doesn't matter. Get the job done.
Yeah.
And the day one, recycle, repurpose, throw away one item. Day 5, day 6, it's 5 items. It's 6 items.
I like your
Do
style.
that the whole month. And for a month that has 31 days, when you get to the end, you will have gotten rid of or repurposed 636 items.
That's fabulous.
It's a great way to spend a month.
That is
and do it with
good.
A significant other.
Can I tell you, that is
That's a good idea.
spectacular. That seems totally achievable. Mary, thanks for calling. You know, we haven't mentioned that I'm shocked. We discussed this.
Small tasks.
No, every couple of years we do this topic. No one has called yet with, what's the name of that thing? There's some Facebook group where you don't throw out Is it the buy nothing thing? Buy nothing, where people don't want to throw away crap. Not like a personal letter, but like a thing, like a bread baker or whatever the hell it is, or a mixer or something
Yeah.
that you don't use, or an Eton emergency crank radio
Right.
because you have 10 of them.
Well, you see lots of people put things out in the street on garbage day too, and sometimes they're really
But they may go in the garbage.
looking. No, they say free, please
Oh,
take,
I
or something
see.
like that, and chairs, or sometimes
Yeah.
you have to watch out with the mattresses though, because you know.
Who wants? No, you don't want to do
Well,
that.
you see that a lot of that in Alston Brighton.
that's a
you know,
problem.
Students,
I
and
know
then
it's a real
everybody's
problem.
bed bugs. They go from one house to the next.
got
It's
it.
not a good thing.
Okay, fine.
But they say in this advice thing, what you should do is start with small projects so you won't be overwhelmed. Like if your refrigerator is a real mess, and you're just look at it, you're thinking, oh my God,
my God.
just do one thing. Just clean out the vegetable drawer.
Wow.
And then the next day you clean out the other vegetable drawer because usually there's two. So if you break it down to small tasks,
Well, you know,
it's
if you
less
do that for
overwhelming.
the whole month, you will have cleaned 647 drawers in your refrigerator.
That's right.
Is that incredible?
That's right. Rishma
Rishma.
from Boxborough, thank you for calling.
Hello, Rishma. Welcome.
Thank you. How are you guys?
We're excellent. Thank you for calling. What's going on?
So, Jim, I have a question for you. Do you
Please.
have a tip for America as a whole to do their own spring cleaning
Well, you
and
have-
get the trash out?
Wait
you
a
know
second.
What I mean?
You have a bad connection. Say it one more time, Rishma.
I'm saying, do you have any tips for America to do a collective spring cleaning and getting the trash out?
catch that?
I guess you do. You have one? I think you might.
What is the
Rishma.
one?
Yeah. What is your tip? What is your tip? We're talking about political trash. I think.
Oh, political. Oh,
Is that what you're talking about?
Oh, that was
I don't know,
a sly
Rishma.
question.
Do you
there,
have any? Do you have any good ideas? Some people are looking for them.
If I knew, I wouldn't be calling Jim.
Exactly. That is a sad state of
Yeah,
affairs.
well, I think a lot of people are in the same place you are, Rishma. Thank you very
Rishma,
much
thanks.
for the call.
I'm sorry the connection was bad. Well, actually, your
Here's
connection was
Trish
bad.
from Malden. She said
Yeah.
she uses the 3-second rule to cull her collection of cookbooks. I then donated 120 cookbooks to the library, and I still have 120 left.
Yeah, but
that's a lot of cookbooks.
I know, but it feels good. You have more space where you live. You know, that's another really satisfying kind of thing. Do you know?
Yeah. Now, somebody's talking about how they just pulled their car over because they had to leave their house. They couldn't handle the stress of the clutter in their house, and they're going for a walk. I mean, it does get overwhelming. Some people are hoarders. You have that great story about the guy in New York City that was a hoarder. Lots of people are semi-hoarders.
I will tell it in 30 seconds rather than my usual 9 minutes.
Mhm.
His name was Mr. Jerusalem. He was 85 years old. He was my client. And he was in New York City. When you're a hoarder, it's called a Collier's Mansion, because and I was a tenant lawyer in the South Bronx. Colliers were two sisters who were hoarders, 150 years ago. And Mr. Jerusalem, he was like 4'11", and he was about to be evicted, even though the landlord loved him because he was a fire hazard because of all his crap. My best friend, another lawyer, Jerry Klein, who was actually bigger than I, went over to Mr. Jerusalem's house. He's punching us, all of his 4'11", because he didn't want to have anything thrown out. He had newspapers to the ceiling with hundreds of dollars of cash stuffed in them. He slept in his trunk, etc. We threw everything out on the sidewalk. He's punching us as we do it. I go to court the next day, and the landlord's not there yet. And the judge says, well, wait for the landlord. I said, we don't need to. I can assert for you that his apartment was totally clean. The landlord rushes in, out of breath. And I said, don't worry, I can dismiss the case because everything is cleaned out. Mr. Jerusalem, all 4'11" of them, after Jerry Klein and I left, went to the sidewalk and put everything damn thing back in his apartment.
Yeah. There's a disease.
Want to hear a happy end of the story? My other
Yes.
client, who was 85, was Mrs. Gentilomo. And Mr. Jerusalem and Mrs. Gentilomo, same size, same age, met in my waiting room. Guess what happened?
They became a couple.
They married.
They married.
In their
Isn't
mid-80s.
that romantic?
Right.
Didn't you see them walking down the
Two
street
hoarders.
holding hands?
I did. Two
the
hoarders.
Two hoarders.
Yeah.
Found true love. Well, there you
Beautiful.
go. They could
Couldn't
hoard.
fit in either
they
apartment.
could hoard together.
True story. Carol in New Hampshire, welcome to the show. Hi.
Hi, Jim and Marjorie.
Hey.
As I've been listening, I haven't heard anybody talk about cleaning.
Oh, we
They're
forgot
talking
about cleaning.
throwing away things, not hoarding.
Oh, cleaning.
How about cleaning?
Okay. We're ready.
Well, when I grew up, twice a year, my mom made all of us, one of 4 girls, we had to wash all the walls, the windows, the woodwork. Beds got ripped apart, frames got washed, everything got scrubbed. And we did that the spring and the fall.
Wow.
So I Yeah, but I mean, everybody, believe me, we just moved. My husband and I just downsized. And believe me, I gave 50% of my clothing away, half of my shoes.
Oof.
I have so much stuff, we're buried. But everything's clean, I will say that.
So, did you carry on this tradition of cleaning?
Everything is spotlessly clean, but I do have a problem. And actually, I have really one very sad problem that if anybody has any advice, I would take it.
Okay. Sure, what is it?
I have a niece who died very young.
Sorry.
She was born with some brain damage. My sister, it was a horrible loss. It was the first baby born to any of us sisters. And I have a picture of her that is an 8x10 picture. And I have that in a frame, and it's with all my other family members. My sister gave me a copy of the original oil painting they had done of their daughter. And she made me a full-size copy. The thing must be 24 by 18.
Wow.
Huge. And I don't want it. And yet I can't. I feel so guilty to throw it away. She's my niece. And yet I know nobody's going to want this. We're in our 70s. And I know that when we die, our son is going to hate us because he's going to have to get rid of everything we own, which, I don't even want to go there. I own so much stuff. It's crazy.
Yeah, that's a tough
but anyway,
one. That is a tough one.
Advice, I feel so guilty.
Well, this is really an upbeat phone call, Carol. Thank you. Now, Carol, let me tell you, I know it's hard. Take a picture of your niece. Take a picture, a beautiful photograph of the thing.
Yep.
And now the throwing out part is difficult.
Yeah, are you kidding me? It's going to be really hard.
Yeah, well,
it's really hard. I think you need a therapist for this one, Carol. I don't think we're equipped.
Instead of throwing out in the trash, which is horrible, drive down the road and just toss it out the window. Do something so you don't feel as guilt-ridden. But take a beautiful photograph and put it as your homepage on your phone or do something.
Oh, listen to
Carol,
this.
thank you. I'm going to think about it. Get back to us next week. Okay,
Sharon in Cambridge, she must be, the texter says, one of your paid supporters. Off topic, but among us is not who among us is not occasionally annoying? I get tired of hearing criticism of Jim, good-natured though it may be. I think she's aiming that at me.
Wow.
Sorry, Sharon. I'm not going to be stopping anytime soon.
Thank you very much.
I'm going to tell
now,
you.
in light of the fact that we know Jared has 3 items in his refrigerator.
Yeah.
Obviously, how many?
2.
2. Obviously, it's
vodka and
Thin Mints.
Thin Mints.
Obviously, it's not a problem.
Occasionally hummus.
He does not have to worry about having a lot of things to throw out.
No,
you
he does not.
Nothing in your place. Is
No,
that correct?
No, I threw it all out.
Okay, fine.
I did another spring cleaning this weekend, actually.
Well, yeah.
Any last remaining things went out onto the sidewalk.
You're like a minimalist kind of thing, right?
Totally.
And you're consciously a minimalist.
Yeah.
And why? What does that do for you?
Because I hate things.
Do you really?
I do. I walk down the street and I think, look at all these houses. They're filled with things.
Things.
All things that came from somewhere will go somewhere, been
Yeah.
shipped from somewhere.
And you're drowning in things. I'm drowning in things.
Jamie,
I'm drowning in pens and paper.
Okay, good.
I have so many pens and
Jamie
paper.
just wrote me a note and asked why the example I picked of the 2 hoarders had to be Italian, Jerusalem and Gentiloma.
Yeah.
You know why they had to be Italian? Because they were Italian. That's why they had to be Italian.
Yeah, I don't know, Jim. You pick on Italians.
I don't
It's
pick
really
on
funny.
Italians.
The few things I got rid of, I gave to my Italian friends. I did. It's true.
That is really a problem.
Yeah.
HR is on the phone.
Okay.
Okay. What do you do? Oh, you're live. It's Friday.
It's Friday.
Live here at the library thing.
It's our weekend review show. I don't
What are
know
you
if
doing?
people have been following this, but yesterday Donald Trump issued an executive order to basically take hold of programming at the Smithsonian.
Yes.
That is the latest charge, and so we will walk you through what that means. He also wants to see the restoration of monuments over the last 5 years that he thinks have been improperly taken down. We'll talk about what that means.
What is that? All Confederate monuments? Is that okay? Go ahead.
Probably.
Okay.
We'll talk about Mayor Wu on The Daily Show
Oh, yes.
and the national platform she's having. And we can't not talk about The White Lotus because everybody is talking about this as
Episode
we're
7,
careening
Sunday
into
night
the
at
season
9.
finale. Yeah. Two more episodes.
2 more
yeah.
episodes. I'm
Isn't
very
this
excited.
It's
yes.
wild.
I didn't even like it that much, but I have to find out how it
Really?
ends. Well, it's getting better as it goes along. Getting better.
This
Beautiful
was-
shots of Tahiti.
It was a slow burn until
Slow burn.
episode
That's right.
6
I'm burning
or
now.
5. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Did you tell us everything or you're not? Is that it?
We're also going to talk about George Foreman and his legacy.
Oh, you are the grill. Did you ever own
Yeah.
one?
I did not ever own one.
I don't see Jared as a George Foreman grill kind of
Too
guy.
much grease in the house. He doesn't
Exactly.
like
That's right. And the
straight
smell.
grease.
Okay.
Oh my goodness, the smell.
Okay, we'll be
I'm gonna
listening.
sneeze.
And it's live for all of you here. Stick around.
Bless
And
you.
Fridays, it's live at the library, and it's a huge, fun show to watch. Good luck there, Jared. Don't screw it up. Go ahead.
Okay.
Oh, bless you.
Thank you. Welcome back. Oh, that's
Welcome
wrong.
back.
Oops.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you very much for listening to another.
It's like F you, San Diego.
Of Boston Public Radio. Thanks everybody who came down here to the Boston Public Library. We really appreciate it.
We hope you enjoy the next 3 hours of the show, by the way. It's really
okay.
going to be good.
You can keep up with us 24/7 by our podcast or check out our TikTok page at Boston Public Radio, which has got some great stuff on it. Monday, we're going to be joined by the president of the American Federation of Teachers, Randy Weingarten.
Oh, that should be good.
Yeah, we're going to talk about the dismantling of the Department of Education, the NAACP's Michael Curry, the photojournalist for Time magazine, Philip Holsinger, and his experience capturing photographs of Venezuelans deported from the U.S. to El Salvador.
He was on the plane.
He was on the plane.
One of the planes where the Venezuelans were shipped to that horrible prison in El Salvador.
We're going to be joined also by the folks from the new Boston Globe podcast, Snitch City, about police and informants. We want to thank our crew, Zoe Matthews, Aidan Conley, Nicole Garcia, Hannah Loss. Additional support from Tasman Vidal. Our engineer is John the Claw Parker. Our executive producer is Jamie Bologna. Thanks to BPL staff.
What's interesting? What's going on around town? We're talking all things arts and culture on The Culture Show. Next on GBH 89.7.
Funding for our programs comes from you and Supermicro and NVIDIA, accelerating AI with a wide range of AI servers and the NVIDIA AI Enterprise software platform. Supermicro is committed to driving AI infrastructure breakthroughs with rack-scale innovations. The nuns and nurses from Nonnatus House return to deliver more than just drama. Everyone's favorite midwives are back for a season 14 premiere. Watch Call the Midwife Sunday night at 8 on GBH2.
You're listening to 89.7 WGBH HD1 Boston. Online at gbhnews.org. GBH News. What matters to you?
I'm Jared Bowen. This is The Culture Show. Coming up today, now he's come for the museums. President Trump has signed an executive order that would restore monuments removed over the last 5 years and radically overhaul the Smithsonian Institution, eliminating what he describes as divisive, race-centered ideology and restoring what he calls truth and sanity to our nation's narrative.
I was saved by God to make America great again.
In Washington, Conan O'Brien receives the Mark Twain Prize, making the case for Twain's relevance today, including his love of diverse, free expression.
I have loved all my life comedy that is self-critical, deflating, and dedicated to the proposition that we are all flawed, absurd, and wallowing in the mud together. Twain is funny and important today because his comedy is a hilarious celebration of our fears, our ineptitude, and the glorious mess of being human.
From there, Mayor Michelle Wu defends Boston on The Daily Show, rejecting jokes about the city's racist reputation.
So how did you become the mayor of Boston instead of answer? Like, I don't know if you've been to Boston, but this is not the demographic for mayor of Boston.
You might be surprised by Boston. Next time you come, we'll have to take you around a little more.
But how did you convince these guys?
We're an incredibly diverse, welcoming, beautiful city.
Okay, that's
And English pop star Ed Sheeran is also a pop-up star, opening a temporary pub in Ipswich called The Old Phone.
I found my old phone today in a box that I had hidden away. Nostalgia trying to lead me astray. Maybe I'll right some wrong.
And the show putting the cool back in water cooler talk. It is the ever scandalous The White Lotus approaching its season finale.
At the end of the week, you will be an entirely different person.
What happens in Thailand stays in Thailand.
The 90s are calling, and they want their culinary craze back.
It's a special TV offer from the king of the grill, George Foreman.
Grill, baby, grill. George Foreman, the boxing champ, as seen on TV, was also a knockout in the kitchen.
My lean, mean, fat-reducing grilling machine with built-in bun warmer delivers great-tasting grilled food in minutes. Best of all, it knocks out the fat.
We take on that and more right now on our Arts and Culture Week in Review.
The Culture Show is made possible in part by a generous contribution from the Fiducia Fund, proud to support this station's arts and culture programming.
Welcome to the Culture Show, live from the Boston Public Library. I'm Jared Bowen.
I'm Callie Crossley.
And I'm Edgar B. Herwick III.
We are going over the week's top arts and culture headlines, starting with President Trump's latest directive to control culture. Yesterday, he signed an executive order intended, in his words, to restore truth and sanity to American history. He's also called for the restoration of monuments, memorials, and statues to, quote, improperly removed or changed in the last 5 years to perpetuate a false revision of history. He has directed Vice President Vance to, quote, eliminate improper, divisive, or anti-American ideology from Smithsonian properties. So if ever we had a sense that the president is trying to control thought, trying to control culture, this is happening. This happened at the Kennedy Center. We saw the instruction there to abandon all DEI issues and only really embrace programming that is representative of all people, which appreciably means white people, that there is supposed to be a celebration of the nation's 250th anniversary for all of its heritage, i.e. the heritage that they want to instruct. The regents of the Smithsonian, its governing body, are made up of the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court, the Vice President, 3 senators, 3 representatives, and 9 citizens. This has always been bipartisan, and this has always been largely independent of the federal government.
And most importantly, it's been documented information. So we're talking about vast numbers of cultural spaces, 21 museums to begin with, but there's all kinds of other entities under the umbrella. He took particular note of the National Museum of African American History and Culture, and that's the one that's focused on the history and culture of African Americans in the United States. It's not that old. It used to be run by Lonnie Bunch III, who now is the secretary for all of the institutions. So I note that that's an African-American man set up to try to deal with this latest executive order. In January, Bunch had already moved to try to tone down whatever was he thought made it seem like they were going against the DEI directive, but this is an entirely different thing. This is saying the history that we know to be documented and true is not, and he wants to see it changed. It's so shocking and so scary, all of that. We should mention that about 50 million people go through all of these museums. There are 2 that are in the process of development. One is one directed at women's history, and the other is the National Museum of Latinos, and so God knows what's going to happen there. So I'll stop there for the moment.
Yeah, I mean, I find myself, I think it is important. I think it's important for us to stop for a minute and remember that there is no one version of history, right? And we need to draw a distinction between what is fact and what is, up for debate and discussion, right? Yeah. So, the Battle of Lexington and Concord, you can say it happened, and it happened on this day, and these people were there. That is fact. That's verifiably true. That is fact, right? Was that the most important battle of the American Revolution? That is up for debate and discussion. That is the role of history. The role of history, just like our democracy in real time, is supposed to be debate and discussion that is informed by immutable facts. And there is a conflating right now of the idea of what is fact and what is up for debate and discussion, and trying to say there is no debate and discussion. We're going to control what the facts are. We're going to say these are the facts and these are the only things that are the facts. And that's just not how history works. History is just us in the past. All of the anything that can happen now, anything that does happen now, the idea that most things that happen are up for debate and discussion was true then too. It just happened in the past.
Well, but the problem is that some of those facts are being debated in the way that this executive order is stated.
Well, that's my point. That's the piece of it that's troubling.
That's why I'm underscoring what you said.
And this is what was specifically targeted here. In this executive order, which explicitly said it wants to eliminate divisive narratives,
Right.
aka let's
Right.
take out the thought and discussion. We don't want to exist in this country
Which is
anymore. And
problematic.
people, this is happening right now. It just happened by executive order yesterday, at least for the Smithsonian. Let's see where else this will go. This executive order targeted the American Women's History Museum, which is online only at this point. It is likely to be built in brick and mortar form within the next 10 years, to specifically say that there will be no transgender representation in this museum. Callie, you mentioned the talk about the African American History and Culture Museum. They also specifically pointed out the American Art Museum in Washington, which has a sculptural show on right now, and it's been described as, by the executive order, as a tool in promoting scientific racism. I looked at this show, and it's called The Shape of Power, Stories of Race and American Sculpture. Again, more reflection of history, more dialogue. These are artists who are looking at their own selves and their own history. As I looked at some of the artists who were represented in the show, the first three I saw happened to be three people I've interviewed in the past. Roberto Lugo talks a lot about his childhood growing up here in the United States and what it meant to him, the ways that he had his founding here and was inspired here, but the ways that he has also been exposed to racism. Titus Kaphar, you can hear him on The Culture Show. Go back and look at our podcast, and you can hear for yourself him talk about the experiences he's had in this country. In this case, it's through his representation of George Washington, but his view of a black man looking at what George Washington represents. And Alison Sarr, the daughter of Betty Sarr, two great artists in this country. She's also looking back with her sculpture at her mixed race heritage. These are their stories that are being targeted by executive order. I looked further down in this list. There's Nari Ward. I just saw one of his sculptures at the Mass Art Museum here 2 days ago, and it's a variation of the same sculpture that's now under target in Washington. There's a piece by Meta Vo Warwick Fuller at the Danforth Museum in Framingham, Massachusetts. I believe it's the same sculpture that they have probably loaned to Washington. If it's not the same piece, then they have a similar piece at the Danforth, which is associated with Framingham State University. If we don't think this is coming to us by these signals from the Kennedy Center and the Smithsonian, people have their head in the sand.
And I want, just picking up again on what both of you have said and what I've said, is that I did an event at the Smithsonian, at the one focused on African American history, with a woman who taught herself to scuba dive. Why? Because she wanted to join a group of black scuba divers whose focus is to find those ships, those slave ships under the sea, and identify the artifacts. All right, so according to the order, we're not supposed to talk about anything that's divisive, but that it includes race. Well, if you talk about, that's the history of the country. People came over on those ships, they went underground, they were looking for the artifacts, so that's not a part of the discussion, that's not part of history. It makes no sense. And I just want to end with this, and this is from 1984, which was written in 1949 by George Orwell. Every record has been destroyed or falsified, every book rewritten, every picture has been repainted, every statue and street building has been renamed, every date has been altered, and the process is continuing day by day and minute by minute. History has stopped. That's from 1984.
Yeah. And that's the point. And the point is that, you know, whatever sort of side of the cultural camp that you find yourself falling on, this is again why I urge to make and draw that distinction between fact and idea or opinion. And to your point, Callie, it's one thing to try to minimize or not talk as much about the divisive stuff. It's another thing to try to eliminate it altogether. The fact of the matter is that the things that have happened, and we need to grapple with the fact that they have happened. Now, how much attention you want to give it, or how much importance you want to put on it, that is up for every individual to decide. And as a society, that's kind of, again, I think one of the ideas in a democracy is that is the stuff that is up for debate and discussion. But it is very troubling when somebody is trying to take away the actual fact that these things have happened.
And they've said they will have control again over the Regents Board. This is a matter of funding as well. And we didn't even talk about the statues and monuments, which I'm sure we'll be talking about soon on the show when we see how exactly that's manifested.
Yeah.
It didn't explicitly talk about the Confederate statues, but it's certainly implied here. Well, speaking of American history, as Mark Twain said, it doesn't repeat itself, but it often rhymes. We'll leave it to you to decide which moment in world history this time rhymes with. But back to Mark Twain. Conan O'Brien received the Mark Twain Prize for American Humor on Sunday at the Kennedy Center. During his acceptance speech, the normally apolitical O'Brien artfully tapped into the legacy of Twain to skewer today's political climate. They've just released some of this because it will be televised, or streamed, I should say, on Netflix in May. But this is from his acceptance speech from last weekend.
Twain hated bullies. He populated his works with abusers such as Huck Finn's alcoholic father, Tom Driscoll, and Pudd'nhead Wilson, and he made his readers passionately hate those characters. He punched up, not down, and he deeply, deeply empathized with the weak.
So many people are talking about Conan O'Brien's comments because he has, as a late-night host, as a comedian, mindful that he has audiences across all spectrums, as you were just talking about, Edgar, then he doesn't necessarily want to alienate them, but clearly got his message across here. Others didn't. There was David Letterman and Stephen Colbert. Sarah Silverman definitely did not. We'll see more of that when Netflix runs the entire thing. But this was very significant, again, happening on the Kennedy Center stage because we have had this discussion on the show. Do people cede this territory now that it's been essentially taken over by the Trump administration and populated by people that the president wants on that board? Or do you take the stage and continue to espouse your views and stand up for your views?
And this was the first significant or signature event since the takeover. So O'Brien and many of them had to have that discussion among themselves. Are we showing up for this? Are we supporting this? And they decided that it was important to go through with it, even given that, so that they could make these statements, which I think is very important. And O'Brien said something else, which I thought was very important, given that they also went through and fired a number of people. He said he wanted to support the Kennedy Center workers. So
yeah, I mean, I got to say, me personally, I really like Conan O'Brien, and I found myself reflecting, on the heels of this, reflecting on the way he handled the Tonight Show situation. If people recall back in the day, Conan O'Brien had grown up and he loved Johnny Carson, absolutely loved Johnny Carson. And at a point in his career, he became the host of The Tonight Show, and it was like the biggest thing in the world for him. It was hugely important. And then within a year or whatever it was, right, Jay Leno, who had been hosting and had been moved off, he was doing better in his show in the ratings, and they basically decided that it wasn't working with Conan O'Brien as host of The Tonight Show. And he was, in fact, given the opportunity. They said, we're going to move you and The Tonight Show to a later spot. We're going to put Jay Leno with his own show in here. He went out of his way to say, no, first of all, I believe in The Tonight Show, and I think if you move me with The Tonight Show to a different time slot, you're ruining what it is. So he says, I don't want to do that. And basically, he ended up out of a job, bowing out. And I remember his final show. And one of the last things he said to his audience, he was like, and he said, and I was a young person at this time, and I said, I'm specifically talking to young people. He was like, don't be cynical. It is don't be cynical. It's my least favorite quality. He's like, if you work hard, if you're a kind person, good things can and will happen to you. And so that has always stuck with me about Conan O'Brien. And I see him in this moment, again, with a backbone, but also with incredible grace. And another thing he said at the very end of this acceptance speech, which I really love, he said, I accept this award in the spirit of humility, stupidity, inanity, irrelevance, fear, self-doubt, and profound, unceasing silliness. That combination of things, I think, is him at the core. I think he believes in it, and it resonates with me. And so I applaud him in what he did
I do
here.
too.
And by the way, for the remarks he made about the staff, he got a 25-second standing ovation just for mentioning the staff. And I think it's clear to point out, just taking the measured approach that maybe Conan O'Brien did, this isn't even the conversation we're having, it's not partisan. This is about the throttling of speech.
Yeah.
And so I think that, and maybe this is what somebody who has a Harvard education like Conan O'Brien can do, is take a different tact and make people understand this in a different way by channeling the words of somebody who lived 2 centuries ago, was dealing with some of these same issues. He was also disgusted by the Gilded Age and the vast accumulation of wealth and money that was so representative of that time too, and the effects that it was having on class and culture. And I think it was very shrewd of him to not be hysterical, to not necessarily be vulgar about this. He never said the
Or
president's
angry.
name by name, and not be angry, and had so many people listening and had people mulling about it and talking about it afterward.
I agree with you totally. And it's going to take many more people like him. I think what's important here is that among us have continued to talk about how sometimes people are looking at these stories independently and they don't see them all knit together, and what he was able to do was to make people understand what you just said. This is a huge, larger issue for us to pay attention to. This is not about me in this one event getting this award. This is about free speech. What do we stand for as Americans? What are we going to stand up for? I mean, that's the point.
I think also in this, I think what is important is, I mean, we were just talking about this idea that, you know, if the Smithsonian is sort of charged with the idea of creating one version of American history, and, you know, these are the figures we care about, these are the ones that don't or didn't even exist, you know, I think it's important that we understand even these figures who we raise up, somebody like a Mark Twain, who, you know, Conan O'Brien spent a lot of his time in this speech not talking about what he thinks, but reminding us the full nature of who Mark Twain was. This American figure, this figure of American culture that, you know, generally speaking, in 2025 is not controversial. Everybody goes, oh yeah, Mark Twain, the guy with the white suit, and yeah, great American, you know. And Conan says, no, let's remember, this is who he was. This was the America he inhabited. This is what he thought. This is a person that we all have agreed for a century is a great American. So I think that's important too.
Well said. Well, you're listening to our Arts and Culture Week in Review live from our GBH studio at the Boston Public Library. Coming up, Mayor Michelle Wu rebuffs Boston's racist reputation on The Daily Show. That's next on The Culture Show. Stay with us.
The Culture Show is made possible in part by a generous contribution from the Fiducia Fund, proud to support this station's arts and culture programming.
President Trump's cuts to the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration has some scallop fishermen facing stricter regulations on their catching limits.
Some are welcoming the cuts, saying that the government has been their downfall. There's too many regulations, and I don't share that opinion.
We'll talk smaller scallop catches at the dock on All Things Considered from NPR News.
Today at 4, here on GBH News 89.7.
Funding for our programs comes from you. And Creative Playthings, dedicated to instilling healthy habits in kids by helping to get them outside this spring. Creative Playthings offers at-home consultations to assess your yard space and playset needs. CreativePlaythings.com. And Liberty Mutual Insurance. Liberty believes progress happens when people feel secure and exists to help people embrace today and pursue tomorrow. Learn more at libertymutual.com. And the Boston Symphony Orchestra, announcing the 2025 season of Tanglewood, a getaway for world-class music, lush landscapes, and lifelong memories. Tanglewood.org.
GBH Daily is a newsletter that keeps you informed, connected, and ready to go every weekday morning. You can subscribe today and get it in your inbox at gbh.org/daily.
Welcome back to The Culture Show. I'm Jared Bowen, live from our GBH studio at the Boston Public Library. I'm joined by co-hosts Callie Crossley and Edgar B. Herwick III. If you're just tuning in, it's our Arts and Culture Week in Review, which includes Mayor Wu on The Daily Show. As you hear here, she found herself repeatedly defending Boston in response to jokes and jabs by host Ronnie Chien about the city's racist reputation.
If you can become the mayor of Boston, maybe one of arguably the most racist cities in America, then maybe there's hope for everyone yet.
Next time you come to Boston, you're gonna have to schedule an extra day, and then I will take you around all the city, and then
to get
you'll
yelled
be
at by racist white people.
We are an
I've seen
incredibly
The Departed.
diverse
I know.
and welcoming city.
Yeah.
And we're a city that really is the example of how everyone in our community, again, majority, people of color,
We can all
quarter
get together
immigrant,
and tell immigrants
and
to
make Friends.
Yeah, so this came on the heels of Governor Healy being on Seth Meyers on National Spotlight. So I think we have two issues here. One that seems to have bubbled up, the persistent notion that Boston is a racist city, which of course Boston has been a racist city, but as Mayor Wu tried to point out, maybe he should come here, maybe he should spend more time here, and I say more given knowing that as a resident of Manchester, New Hampshire, he did spend a fair amount of time in Boston, but maybe he would see a different kind of city. But this was also the mayor having a platform for espousing government and values, which I thought was a pretty extraordinary interview as she talked about the role of government, which as a child, as an immigrant in an immigrant family, she found fearful, but now she is the government trying to use that power for good.
Well, a couple of things. First of all, he's doing a series. If people may have seen him, he's a part-time host on Comedy Central. He's very funny. He's very good in some other independent productions as well. It's always been one of my favorites. And his series was really to highlight some contributions of Asian Americans who are doing some important and interesting things. So given that context, he's like beating her in the head. But by now, if you don't know, you should know that Michelle Wu can stand up for herself. So that's what she did. What I thought was an immense amount of patience, which I'm not sure I would have, but she has 3 children, so maybe that's why she has it, is that he must have asked her about 15 times, what about the racism? What about the racism? What about the racism? And she was like, well, and she just came back. And then I thought, this article says about the 5th or 6th time, he went beyond this. She said, how hard do I have to say it back to him?
This was definitely not his best moment as a performer, I will say. It felt like somebody who, I don't want to say, I have no idea how he prepares or whatever, but so I don't want to say he didn't prepare, but it felt like he had this like one bit and he just kept going back to it again and again. So just on a pure...
And to add to that, he didn't know what to do when it didn't work.
Yeah, exactly. So it didn't work. It didn't land the way he thought it was going to land, right? And so I think he seemed to be foundering a bit and he just kept going back to it and back to it. Jared, you raise a good point. I mean, I think it is interesting, right? Because I think on the one hand, I think Mayor Wu did a great job comporting herself. I think she was just fantastic in the interview. Again, I'm sort of looking at it just as like a piece of television. I thought she did a great job. She pivoted well. She made great points.
Turns out that congressional testimony was great training.
Exactly. But like you made a point which I think is really interesting, which is that clearly he talked about the fact that he spent time in Manchester, New Hampshire, so that like racist Boston thing for him at least was partly a lived experience. So like that piece of it is real. But the Boston as the most racist city in America thing, I think, I mean, it is. I don't want to say it's an interesting question, but it is one of. I don't know, like the brand. I'm always very interested in this idea of the brand of Boston outside of Boston, for good or for bad,
that
right?
For sure
for good or for bad,
and
like how true that is of anybody's lived experience here in Boston. Like is the Wahlberg's Boston is or like what I like to think of as like the Ben Affleck Boston, right? There are these versions of Boston that I think for people outside of Boston, that's kind of like what they get, and it's an interesting idea, the idea of how a city's reputation or how it markets itself or it gets marketed beyond the control of the city outside of it. And it's clear that racist Boston thing still has relevance to some people somehow.
I can't tell you. Anybody that moves to Boston who has any connection to me, people call me and that's the first question they want to answer. How do you live there?
Right.
I don't know how, because that's what they know about it. So that's very real to a lot of people. My point in this situation was, Ronnie, give it up. First of all, she's the living example of what you're saying is not possible, because she is ostensibly asking her the question, how did somebody like you manage
they kept
to
saying,
get...
like, how did you get all those guys to vote for you?
Right.
How did you get all those guys to vote for you?
Well, so that's answering part of your question right away, off the top, which he never seemed to address. He needed to come back to her in some way if you're going to make this something that sticks. But being the smart person that she was, she used it as an opportunity, because you know that you're never really talking to the host at hand. You're talking to the wide audience beyond that. And Comedy Central has a huge audience. And so she used it to talk about, to work against the false narrative that in general, Boston as a sanctuary city, or what some people believe is a sanctuary city, is somehow less safe and not a good place because immigrants are screwing it up. And by the way, here I am, in this job. So something must be going on that's working for us. Yeah. And you should come and see it.
Well, he was almost demeaning her. And now as I think about it a little bit more, having watched it this morning and now hearing you both talk about it too, it's almost demeaning her more to say, how did this happen? Like she didn't deserve it, or she didn't earn it herself.
And she kept saying, like, do the work, do the work, do the work.
Yeah. Exactly. So it was bizarre. It's like reminding those reporters who get a narrative and then it continues and continues. And by the time you're interviewing somebody and you might ask some variation of that question or stumble into it, the subject is really irritated because that's not the story.
Yes.
Right.
Well, keeping in Boston for a moment, SpeakEasy Stage Company had a very big announcement yesterday, taking over the reins, and only the second person to lead the theater in its near 35-year history is local theater veteran Don M. Simmons. I think it made all of us very happy here on the Culture Show. Anybody who's been a theater audience member in the last 20 years probably has seen a show that Don M. Simmons has directed or had some sort of hand in, because she, a black woman we should mention, apropos of our last conversation, has risen up in this city as an administrator, as an advisor, as a teacher, and as a really, really extraordinary director who I have always thought belongs on the Broadway stage, because her talent is so magnificent, as we've seen in awards that she's received and really successful shows. Before we get your take on this, I had the opportunity to speak with her in 2023 about the play KISSING, which she directed at the Huntington, and she talked about what she wants audience members to get out of the theatrical experience, because that one was a really boisterous one among the audience members.
We are here sharing this air together, and I love how polite we want to be as an audience, but what I want is for everybody to feel like that. When you get that, the way that people talked about it, how charged it was when they left, and that good feeling. Like, I think there's so much more to theater, and it can leave you sort of spiritually uplifted.
She thinks very holistically.
Yes, she does. And I want to point out that she was chosen after a national search, even though she's from here. 100 candidates from 15 states and 3 countries.
So that's actually an international search.
That is correct. That is right. And I also want to point out that in terms of just her beautiful directing, if you just saw Sojourners, the first of the 9 cycle play in the UFOT family cycle, she directed that. So you got a chance to see, and people know that was a really impactful and, cliffhanging end of the play. So anyway, she's just fantastic in every way. I think she has really embedded herself in the theater community in ways that other people recognize. In fact, I think one of the reviewers said her community connectedness is what helped elevate her
above
candidacy.
These other candidates.
Yes.
In addition to raw talent and hard work and all of that stuff. What I find kind of interesting in here, I mean, as you've said, I mean, I think we all agree personally. We think this is a great choice, but is looking at this is a huge transition for a very now, kind of established organization here in town. I mean, this is, how do you sort of move from, under leadership from birth till now, and then hand the reins over and say, okay, like, here's the person who's going to carry this forward into the next place. And, not to make too, big of a point about it, but I think in the context of all this other stuff we were talking about, I find myself thinking about that and the extraordinary idea of what America's about, right? Like, which is to say that if you think of America, you think of the democracy kind of as an organization, which I think was in some ways a way you can read the founding, that says, like, rather than like be the voice of a king or one person or a dictator or a CEO or whatever it is in their mold and their vision, we believe that this thing, this organization, this country has an idea, has a core. And like we're, the first generation fosters that and creates it and establishes it, but then says the idea of this thing is going to be strong enough that if somebody else can step in and lead it and still carry it forward, it's still going to be uniquely it. But it's also going to be different in its own way because this other person or this other group of people are coming in. And I look at an organization like this kind of going through that right now. And that's kind of cool in a way.
And it changes our whole ecosystem. We love that. And we're very excited to see what she does going forward.
I found my old phone today in a box that I had hidden away.
This is British pop star Ed Sheeran performing his unreleased song Old Phone, which is also the name of his pop-up pub in Ipswich, not the Ipswich of Suffolk, England, but our Ipswich here on the North Shore. So everybody's talking about this. Yep. The town of Ipswich issued a statement saying, don't come, basically, unless you're invited, unless you get text confirmation, do not come anywhere near this pop-up pub. But it seems, if you put all the pieces together, that he's going to be shooting a video and has asked people to come with all of these memories. Will somehow be part of this video for this song. It's really fun, given that he was just here for St. Patrick's Day, too. He likes us. He really likes us.
I know. And then he made a guest appearance on WBZ. Also, I mean, I think this is so fun. I saw an interview this morning on Channel 5 with Danielle, first person in line. She said she had a text, and the text said, be there at 1. And she said, you know what? 5:30 works, too.
Yeah.
Because she wants to make sure she got in. And I'm hoping that she gets in and, first and gets her choice of where to sit. So they recreated the outside of the pub to look like this old phone pop-up thing, which looks beautiful.
Yeah.
My only concern is that I'm told, looking at the menu, that they do serve Guinness. He's in a viral video with Guinness about splitting the G.
Yep.
So that's important.
Yep.
But they're serving tater tots. I'm sorry, we're in Ipswich and there's no clams? Can't somebody get some clams there? What's the point of this?
I like how you went full, let me check the menu here. Let me see what's going to be good.
Come on.
It's a pop-up pub that's going to be open for 2 days.
I don't care. Somebody get to frying and get that man some clams.
Especially when Essex or Woodman's is right down the street.
I'm saying.
I love that. I mean, this is just kind of a fun story. I love when people who seemingly don't. I mean, this guy's an enormous international superstar, and I sort of understand in marketing, it's you got to continue to do things. You can't assume that your brand is always going to be out there and whatever. But I love when people who have this kind of power and money do creative things like this, and it's so cool that it's happening here. I mean, this is they don't have to go to the time and energy and money to pull this stunt, and I'm glad that they're they're getting what they are putting in for this, which is the idea is it creates buzz. But when you're sort of clever enough and you're sharp enough, you've earned the buzz, and I think this is a situation where this is earning the buzz.
And in the past, and so as I mentioned, he did the St. Patrick's Day concert here in Boston. In the past, he's met with the young musicians at the Tobin Community Center. He went to Children's Hospital, and for the benefit of all of us here, he stopped by WBZ this morning to give us, if you want the weather for this morning, he'll give it to you. Here's his weather forecast.
Hello and welcome to the weather in Ipswich, Massachusetts. As you can see today, it's going to be a little bit cloudy, but all is not lost. It's going to be about 55 degrees, sun and clouds, breezy and mild for the day. Not quite T-shirt weather, but sweater weather if you own one of those, which I'm sure you do, because we're in Massachusetts. Later on, a little bit more cloudy, maybe a chance of showers at about 1 p.m. Then we're going to get a green cloud of something. Hopefully it's not toxic.
Okay, so until those last couple of seconds, he's a really good weatherman.
Yeah, he's pretty good. Well, he has a knack, and again, I say this, I don't really particularly like him as a musical artist. I know. He's fine. He's kind of inoffensive and whatever. But I don't own any of his records. I don't listen to any of them. It's fine. But as a person, I think he's got a little sort of something that I like. He ended up
for his wife, the Christmas songs. Come on,
it's so lovely.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. I think he's just a great everyday guy. And I harken back to the days when he was couch surfing on Taylor Swift's couch.
Yeah, I mean, I like that he popped up.
That.
Was it Game of Thrones? He just sort of popped up in Game of Thrones at one point. Good on him. He's making the most of it.
Pop up here in Massachusetts.
Callie, I think Edgar was employing reverse psychology, because which of the three of us is now going to be invited to the pop-up pub? It's the one who's the most skeptical. It's not the two fans
is coming to fruition.
All right,
think about that.
Coming up, the White Lotus. We have thoughts, plus the grill of a lifetime, George Foreman's iconic lean, mean, fat fighting machine. That's next on The Culture Show. Stay with us.
The holy month of Ramadan ends this weekend, an event that depends on the lunar calendar. Moon sighting is a celebratory event. It is a community-driven event. There is a lot of emotion behind it.
The skill and practice of moon sighting. That's next time on The World.
This afternoon at 3, here on GBH News 89.7.
Our programs are made possible thanks to you. And Bernadine Sung Megason of Compass Real Estate, serving buyers and sellers throughout Greater Boston. Proud sponsor of A Conversation with Connie Chung, as she speaks about her career in journalism on March 30th. And Celebrity Series, presenting the Alvin Ailey American Dance Theater, featuring Mr. Ailey's timeless masterpiece, Revelations, April 24th through 27th at the Box Center Wang Theater. Tickets at celebrityseries.org. Sponsoring GBH 89.7 can benefit your business and helps keep the local news that matters to you on the air. To learn more about multi-platform packages, visit gbh.org/sponsorship.
If you're looking for a break from the non-stop headlines, check out the Joy Beat podcast. Every episode, we step back and celebrate the heartwarming stories and inspiring people in our communities. Find the Joy Beat wherever you listen to your podcasts.
Welcome back to The Culture Show. I'm Jared Bowen, live from our GBH studio at the Boston Public Library. I'm joined by co-hosts Callie Crossley and Edgar B. Herwick III. If you're just tuning in, it's our Arts and Culture Week in Review. As you can hear, that includes The White Lotus, the show that, thank you, Sam Rockwell, has shocked an unshockable society, the show that has Duke University crying in the corner, and the show that's hosting its season finale in Philadelphia, the city of brotherly love. Ha ha ha, that's not true, but if you've been watching the show, you know exactly what I'm talking about.
Jared. Very clever.
So turn your dial down if you haven't caught up, but really, if you haven't caught up, that's on you, because this is a show that so many people are talking about now. We raced to catch up, or at least I did this week. I'm like Callie, I wait for everything to pile up before I watch, and then I realize that's going to be a liability here in this case. But this is super fun, first of all, in this moment, which is so serious, but to have at least a little bit of diversion and something. I think after we have seen so much in the world, but so much rendered in entertainment, it's hard to think that there could be something so shocking. But it happened. Here's a little bit from that memorable monologue from Frank, a.k.a. Sam Rockwell, this season in The White Lotus that caught the attention of the internet. Here's a little from, again, that monologue.
Hey, we all have our Achilles heel, man, you know. Where does it come from? Why are some of us attracted to the opposite form and some of us the same? Sex is a poetic act. It's a metaphor. Metaphor for what? Are we our forms? Am I a middle-aged white guy on the inside, too? Or inside, could I be an Asian girl?
Right. I don't know.
And it just keeps going from there.
Yeah. That's the cleanest cut
version
for
of
sure,
it.
Because on the either end of it, it's pretty
I
colorful.
would say you can't miss Walter Goggins' response to him while he's doing it. His whole facial expression is like, what is happening?
Totally.
The most brilliant cutaways ever.
It's great cutaways, but it's also like, like he's not really taking a position. He's not judging. He's just kind of letting it happen. And he's like, he's like, this is happening to me. This is happening
and
to
I'm
me
trying
right
to figure
now,
out how to
I'm
respond.
just trying to survive it. Yeah,
exactly.
No. I love Sam Rockwell, by the way.
Yes.
And Goggins. I mean,
So I have a bifurcated response to White Lotus. I think, first of all, that people should enjoy the trash TV that they enjoy. For whatever reasons you enjoy it, fine. And so this is some high-level good trash. It's very well written. The production values are off the chain.
The music is incredible.
That's what I'm saying.
The music is incredible.
It's got all of that going on. And even along the way, because the show has moved to different locales, and now we're in Thailand, pays attention to some of the cultural happenings on the ground, which not in a Disney way, which is a compliment. All right, now having said that, I just hate these people. I hate the whole thing about it. I don't care. And it's annoying to me in ways that I understand it's a satire, and I know that it's supposed to be a modern version of Downton Abbey or Upstairs, Downstairs, or whatever. I get all that, Mike White. great, good for you. But I just hate these people. He made them, maybe he did it too well, so I just could care.
I mean, in some ways, that is a little bit the point, right? You're supposed to hate, but I think you are also supposed to like them a little bit, right? I think the idea I think the idea is like holding the mirror, where it's like you're kind of like, oh, I kind of want these beautiful things that they have too, but also, oh my gosh, look how awful all of these people are, but also, oh my God, they're about to get what they deserve because any one of them could get killed at any moment, right? There's all of that going on here. I mean, I've liked White Lotus from the start. I think this season is also very, very good. I mean, it's to your point. It's absolutely beautiful. The people in it are beautiful. The locales are beautiful. I mean, it's just like incredible to look at. The music's amazing. I think with me a little bit, this is not necessarily even a criticism, but it's like if I think about like a band, for example, like this is an example. These 3 seasons so far is like, he came out of the gate. It's a really good band. They have a really good record. They put the second record out. Sounds a lot like the first, maybe a couple little things. Third record, you're getting the same thing again. Maybe you ramped it up a little bit here or there. Not that the show ever has to, but it's, this is not a breakthrough album. This is not Radiohead's OK Computer, right? Like, this is the same trick being played 3 times, being ramped up a little bit more each time. I still like it.
I disagree.
Still here for it.
I really, really enjoy this show. I thought the sophomore album to keep
in my analogy,
is a typical sophomore album. I was a little disappointed, but now it's back for me. I've loved this slow build. I think it's.
Some people thought it was too slow. You didn't have
not
that?
at all.
Okay.
Especially when I binged. I couldn't wait to keep watching more and more. I never stopped.
It is a little slow, but I also don't mind the slowness of it.
Yeah, and I think it's well charted. And Callie, I have to disagree with you. I love to be around people I don't like because they're the most interesting people. Doesn't that keep the coffee table, the coffee chatter, the martinis a little more interesting when you're next to the people you don't like?
No.
Like, for instance, Parker Posey's character.
Yeah.
I mean, and this is what Mike White, I think, is so brilliant in the way he has created the show and given people like Jennifer Coolidge a great platform. Yeah. Still hoping for a prequel so that we can get Jennifer Coolidge, the alive Jennifer Coolidge back. But just let's appreciate Parker Posey for a little bit as Victoria Ratliff, with her accent that has inspired people. It hasn't inspired people this much since Catherine O'Hara in Schitt's Creek. I still can't believe we could say that title on the air. But let's listen to Parker.
These are the Ratliff family. They're staying at the hotel.
Ratliffs. Victoria Ratliff.
Oh, pleasure.
Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you. Welcome.
You work here in Thailand?
I'm retired.
Oh. What was your line of work?
Government work and a little investing.
Oh. Well, Timothy's in finance. Maybe you know some of the same people.
Never know.
You never do.
You never did. It's Tsunami. The way she has crafted this character is so enjoyable, and that's what this repertory company of actors and White Lotus always allows us, is to latch on to these characters that we might love to hate. How about that?
Yes, well, that's true too. I just feel a little bit sorry for Natasha Rothwell being there all alone as the African American person watching these crazy people go around.
I gotta say something that's really stood out to me. I think Patrick Schwarzenegger is great. I think he's really, really very, very good in this.
He's a good actor. I just don't like his character.
Yeah,
but
I mean, well, again, you're not necessarily supposed to like his character, but like, I think
you're really not supposed to like his character.
I think he's really good. And also, I love the fact that Duke University is kind of beside themselves about this too.
Well,
but it's like they've come out and been like, no, you shouldn't be saying Duke so much and take the Duke T-shirts off. And,
but all the lawyers say they don't have one legal ground to stand on. And I think this is going to help enrollment, actually.
Probably will.
Oh, I don't know about that, but okay.
If people can get in, that is.
Yes, that's exactly right.
All right. Well, next, George Foreman, who died last week at age 76, was both a boxing champ and a king of the grill. There have been so many articles this week celebrating his lean, mean, fat-fighting machine, which became a kitchen craze and a multi-million-dollar enterprise. It's fun to think about this moment when the George Foreman grill was released, and he was everywhere. He became an even bigger celebrity through this, partly because he was on our televisions all the time. But as I was thinking about it, what made him such a great spokesperson? I think it was his smile. He just seemed so genuine. He didn't invent this.
No.
As he said, he put his name on it. I mean, so he was also really, really transparent. But he brought this into our homes in a way that was so unbelievably charming. He happened to meet a great moment where we were all still watching television, where there was a health craze, and this took off. And I didn't realize to what extent. More than $100 million. He sold this company for about $138 million ultimately.
Yeah.
Well, you know, when he died last week and people started talking about the grill and his association with it, the numbers of people who bought it and still have it, like me.
I have one. I used it like 2 weeks ago.
And I'm going to pull mine out and use it again because it really does work quite well. So it's that part of the nostalgia. And also, for me, I recognize that this is going to be something that's in the Smithsonian. Well, might have been in the Smithsonian. I don't know.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness,
as
that's
one
right.
of those pieces that represent a cultural piece of a time and a place. And, along with some other kitchen elements. And so that's how important it got for a lot of people and as useful. And he was so funny. Sold this for $137 million.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow.
That was a lot of chicken breast.
Yeah, it is interesting.
It
It's also really interesting to stop and take a step back and look at the whole of George Foreman as a figure in America and a man of his time, right? So, there's that line about there are no second acts in, America, whatever. Well, he had a second act. I mean, his early life, there's a few things that I think are worth pointing out. One, he dropped out of school when he was 15 years old, right? And by his own admission, he kind of was a mugger. And when he was 16, he saw a television ad for the federally funded Job Corps. He went into the Job Corps. He got his GED. That's run under the Department of Labor. So in the climate we're in, and we're talking about federal spending, considering that, became an Olympian. And then an amazing boxer. I mean, he knocks out Joe Frazier in the second round in '73. That was a huge deal. But like his thing as a boxer was he was pretty gruff, he was quiet, he was kind of mean,
Definitely.
And then
totally different persona.
Again, his story, the way he tells it is basically he has a boxing match, he gets the crap beat out of him, he's in the dressing room after, and he's like feeling like he's going to die, and he's born again, and he gets touched by God, and he becomes a minister, and he becomes this affable, likable, smiling man, and has this whole other life as George Foreman Part 2. I mean, it's an incredible story.
It really
it's
is.
an incredible
Don't forget
American
the 12
story.
children.
And the 12 children. George the second, George the third, the fourth, and the fifth, and the sixth. He was like, I named all my sons George because I wanted us to share something. It was like, you're already in family. You're sharing that. But yeah, I mean, kind of an amazing. Just an amazing life.
Yeah. Yes.
All from a thing. And as people always said about Suzanne Summers, if you make fun of her for the Thigh Master, she's laughing all the way to the bank.
That's exactly right.
Well, that means it's time for our lightning round. We'll keep this a real lightning round this week with our quick observations of the headlines that caught our attention this week.
I am very excited about number one on the call sheet. It's a new Apple series. It's 2 parts. It's a documentary series interviewing. Number one on the call sheet means you're the lead on any production. So they're interviewing all these Black Hollywood stars, again, in this time and period. This is interesting, about their various journeys, and it's supposed to be fabulous. And it's supposed to have, because it just starts today, that's why I'm saying it's supposed. One of the reviewers who got a preview said it's so juicy because all these people pop up with, that and they're talking about their connections to other people and their experiences on the set that they just don't talk about. So I'm looking forward to it. They did an interesting thing. One hour is all men, and the other hour is all women. I don't know why they did that, but anyway.
Yeah, I mean, you gotta find unique ways to frame things in this cultural, in this media climate, just to break through.
Exactly.
Sounds great, Edgar. What was yours?
Well, I'm giving a thumbs up to the University of Maryland, who announced this week their commencement speaker for this year, and it is none other than Kermit the Frog. So yes, Kermit the Frog, the great Kermit the Frog, in my estimation, will be doing the commencement address at the University of Maryland. Of course, Kermit the Frog was created by Jim Henson. Jim Henson went to the University of Maryland. Again, another figure that I would always say he's worth looking at in his life as a very interesting American, a guy from the South. Anyway, but Kermit, this is also his second commencement address. Kermit also gave the commencement address in 1996 at Southampton College and Long Island University. And he had gotten an honorary doctorate of amphibious letters from that school for his environmental work and pointing out that it's not easy being green, I guess, and gave a commencement address then. Matt Vogel is the guy who's been voicing Kermit for many years now, and he'll be the guy behind Kermit.
Question for you.
Yeah, go on.
I've done a number of commencement speeches.
Yes.
You usually get to bring somebody. Is Miss Piggy coming?
It's a great question. I don't know that we know yet. As we all know, it's on again, off again.
I was going to say, we don't know where in the on-off switch we are right now.
It's a great question as to where they're at right now.
And I'll point out that they talked about this on CBS, the CBS Morning Show,
Yeah.
and they mentioned it in front of Gayle King, who apparently was the commencement speaker either last year or the year before. She didn't necessarily have a poker face when learning that she's been succeeded by Kermit the Frog. Well, so I love this one. We've been talking a lot about arts funding and the importance of arts funding, especially as it's going away from the federal government. And then I just stumbled across this week. There hasn't been a lot of coverage, but there is a brand new fellowship called the Wagner Arts Fellowship, and this is by the Wagner Foundation in Cambridge. Again, it's the inaugural one. They have identified 3 artists who apparently have been nominated by their peers. Yay. And they are Lamerchi Fraser, Daniela Rivera, and Wen T. Sen. They are 3 artists in Boston who, by their parameters, are at least mid-career. They are people who have immersed themselves in their community, tell community stories, do great work. They get $75,000, and clearly this is a foundation that has been listening to what artists need, because not only do they get $75,000 to use for whatever they want, and this is what artists say. Yep. $75,000 is huge, whether it's to buy food or to pay rent or to buy supplies. It just allows me to do what I want to do. But they also get career consulting, legal advice, financial planning. They'll also be shown, I mentioned it just at the top of the show, the Mass Art Museum. They'll be at that museum and at the Wagner Arts Gallery in Cambridge. And in their statement, they said they want to elevate artists' voices at this critical moment. So, and these are 3 artists who are we know them, we've met them through our own arts reporting here. They are fabulous and so deserving of this, and it's nice to see the philanthropic community recognize the need that they can fill. Obviously, this has probably been in the works for a while, but it makes a big difference.
I love these foundations where it's basically like kind of the nominations come in from somebody else in the community.
MacArthur-like.
Exactly. MacArthur-like. I just think that's such a fantastic. Like if you can do it that way, I think that is such a great way to do it.
Because you're just doing your work, and then somebody watches you and
rolls up and is just like, this person's awesome.
I know.
Somebody ought to give them some money.
Right.
Like, that's so great.
So I'm shouting out Lamerchi, because Lamerchi I've known forever, and I love her so much. And she redid my sneakers for the sneaker ball for Embrace Boston. She does beadwork, she does quilting, she is a fabulous artist. So
not only a fabulous artist, also a great historian. In fact, we have an episode of the Curiosity Desk where we do a walk around Beacon Hill with Lamerchi, talking about some of the history there in terms of the Underground Railroad and enslaved Americans who ended up in the North End. I mean, she's incredible. What a Renaissance woman.
I love it.
Congratulations to all of them. Well, that is all for this edition of The Culture Show. You can tune in Monday for National Treasure Peter Drummey from the Massachusetts Historical Society. Those are David McCullough's words, by the way. We like to echo them. He is an amazing historian there. He'll talk about their latest exhibition, which examines the first year of the American Revolution. Plus, he's a corn star. Playwright Robert Horn joins me about writing dad jokes and corn-fed puns for the hit Tony Award-winning musical Shucked.
Wow.
And, Julia Swanson is also here with the Art Walk Project. She'll talk about great public art for us to see here in the Boston area. Callie, what's coming up on Under the Radar?
We have a powerhouse panel of top women in sports. The rugby team, the national soccer team, and the Celtics in honor of Women History Month, talking about the impact of women at the top of their game and also the renewed enthusiasm for women's sports in general. And then we are. So what are we doing in the second part of the show? I just blanked on it. It's something really good.
That's always
It's going to be amazing. Tune in. You know what?
Tune in and
you'll find. Tune in to Under the Radar, and you will find out what's on the second half.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Perfect tease.
Perfect tease.
And Edgar, what do you want to point people toward for their curiosity?
I'm going to say check out this episode.
I remember. Boston Comedy Festival, 25 years. Thank you. It's really funny. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, check out our episode, our episode with Lamergy Frazier. So what got us on this is the question that came into the curiosity desk was this idea that these people had heard this notion that if a house had a white chimney, that meant that here in this area, that meant that it was like a safe place for people on the Underground Railroad. We wanted to know if that was true or not. As part of that, we end up in Beacon Hill with Lamergy Frazier. So I encourage people to check out that episode if you haven't seen it.
Sounds great. Well, thanks today to the BPL technical and logistics crew, Maddie Geyer, Bill Francis, Sandra Lopez-Burke, Juan Jose Cadena, Chris Hanks, Pat Lally, and Olivia Corcio. Also thanks to the Lennox Hotel and the Newsfeed Cafe. Thank you to everyone who came down here to the Boston Public Library, to our studio here today. We always love seeing you, and everybody watching us online streaming at our YouTube channel. We really appreciate you being here. I'm Jared Bowen. Give your brother a hug, but that's all. And have an art-filled weekend.
Where is Mary? Where is she? Where is she? She's just about to close up the library!
The Culture Show is made possible in part by a generous contribution from the Fiducia Fund, proud to support this station's arts and culture programming.
Coming up on 3 o'clock, I'm Greg Farisi, and this is Hopkins & Smith